This from Oliver. Oliver writes, I can't believe you're taking Latimore off the hook. He's clearly the problem. And what a mistake it was to give up multiple draft choices for him in the middle of last season. Penny wise, pound foolish, and very short sighted. Thank you, Oliver, for that. I'm not going to go back on what I said at the time of the Marshon Latimore trade, and that was I liked the trade. They were in contention for a playoff run last year, and they were not very good on defense. They were not very good. They certainly weren't good enough at corner. And I was all in on that trade in part because it wasn't a rental in the moment. And Marshon Latimore, let's not forget, even though he has not played well since arriving in Washington, Marshon Latimore is a multi-time Pro Bowler and was a very good player when he was healthy. He got here unhealthy, and now that he is healthy, it hasn't really appeared much better. Not every trade works, Oliver, but I was not against the trade in the moment. And they got to figure something out there for sure. And I don't know if it's all Latimore either. That's the problem. I'm not taking him off the hook. I'm not taking anybody off the hook. I said the defense was terrible on Sunday. And through 4 games, there is a real indication at this point that it hasn't improved that much from where it was last year, because the only 2 good performances the defense has had is against 2 teams that were inept on the days that they played them. Doesn't mean that, those teams aren't capable on some days. The days that Washington played the Giants and the Raiders, those 2 teams were inept offensively. And that's why we came away thinking, okay, well, maybe this year's different. Defense is variable year to year. There's no rhyme nor reason for it sometimes. They added some players. They did add some personnel. Maybe year 2 in the Joe Witt Jr. system's going to work. And, I think some of us were like, let's wait and see, because the Green Bay game was different from the Giant game and the Raider game, and the Falcons are more capable than the Giants and the Raiders. Let's let this play out before we start assigning, 85 Bears labels to this defense after the Giant opener. But I'm not taking it off the hook. All off season, to me, this was the number one concern, the number one mystery. It's not solved yet. They've only played 4 games. Yeah, there seems to be issues. Coverage, relying on a pass rush without a special pass rusher to mask the problems in coverage. We have an offense that isn't doing what it did last year, in part, mostly because the quarterback hasn't played in 2 games. Yeah, but Sheehan, offense hasn't been the problem with Marcus Mariota the last 2 weeks. That's fair. One of the opponents was set up, and that was the Raiders. And on Sunday, 27 points should have been enough. But if Jaden Daniels is playing on Sunday, 4 of those field goals turn into maybe 2 of those field goals. And it's one of the games that we saw last year with a last-minute drive and number 5 doing his magic act at the end, strapping the team to his back and getting him into the end zone for a go-ahead score. But as far as the defense goes, I am not about to go back and revisionist history my Marshon Latimore take. I liked the trade in the moment. I thought, you know what? This is a sign that they've recalibrated the recalibration, and they recognize their position in the NFC with the record they have. And in that moment, if you recall, the division was in play. Not only the division, a 2 seed was legitimately in play, meaning that they would play at least 1 home game, if not 2, before they'd play in an NFC title game. It didn't work out that way. Okay, they ended up, losing the division to a Philadelphia team that turned red hot at the end of the season. Yeah, they gave up some picks. They gave up some picks for a guy with a contract, though, for 2 years, under contract for 2 years. Here's one thing we can say safely at this point. As of September 30th, my oldest son's birthday, happy birthday, Casey. As of September 30th, 2025, we can say pretty safely that Marshon Latimore is probably not going to be in a contract confrontation situation in the offseason. I don't think the team right now has any plans to extend him, but things change, so it's really not that safe of a statement. Here's what I'd like to see. I would like to see, some reaction to Sunday and to the Thursday night game against Green Bay. Some self-realization that there are some issues defensively, especially in coverage. Communication issues, scheme, play calling, talent, execution. Offensively, there were some issues at guard. They made changes. They swapped out 2 guard positions and made Brandon Coleman a starter inactive for the last 2 weeks. So maybe some of that is coming. Quinn said some things yesterday that were interesting, and we're going to get to some of those here in the first hour of the show. I don't deal with those of you that, want to go back and redo the Marshon Latimore trade. I would bet, Oliver, you didn't have much of an issue with it when it happened. Most people didn't. There was some pushback. Like, what are we doing? We're not winning the Super Bowl this year. Yes, we can definitely be a playoff team, but we're not going to win the Super Bowl. We got damn close to getting to a Super Bowl. Damn close. The issue, by the way, was defense. And Marshon Latimore couldn't help out because he wasn't healthy. I don't think they traded for him in the middle of the season expecting him not to contribute last year. If they didn't expect him to contribute last year, they would have waited until after the offseason to trade for him, where maybe the price would have been a little bit different with him having essentially just a full year left on his contract. Max is here. I'm here. We've got 2 guests on the show today. Grant Paulson's going to jump on with us at 11:35. It starts today, October baseball, playoff baseball, the best. There's just something so October, and tomorrow's the first day, and today is September 30th, so it's actually not starting in October, about coming home and having playoff baseball on, being able to turn on playoff baseball in the middle of the afternoon. Detroit-Cleveland game 1 at 1 o'clock. How about a Padres-Cubs? That was a National League Championship Series in 1984, I believe. Padres-Cubs, 3 o'clock. Red Sox-Yankees in a first-round matchup at 6 o'clock. And then Reds-Dodgers. Yeah, the Mets are out. The Reds are in. We didn't talk a lot of baseball yesterday. We didn't talk a lot of Ryder Cup yesterday either. And Steve Sands is going to join us at 12 noon. He was on the call all weekend long. I have to admit that after the game on Sunday, I had multiple screens going. It's not like I'm a one-screen guy, but my attention was on the Ryder Cup. That was compelling sports reality theater. I think that's one of those events where you didn't even need to be a golf fan to enjoy it, as the U.S. was making real the possibility of an all-time comeback in the Ryder Cup. They didn't get there. They did not get there. Man, is Shane Lowry clutch. He is so clutch. That was awesome. Steve Sands will join us at 12 to discuss. So I wanted to talk about where we are through 4 games. It is, approaching the quarter pole. The quarter pole is something we are approaching. It used to be the quarter pole. It's not the quarter pole anymore because we've got a 17-game schedule, of course. The quarter pole will be reached, if you are wondering about the math, at the end of the first quarter, Sunday in Los Angeles against the Chargers. And I already am on record yesterday saying, I think we're going to win this game this week. I think Washington goes to LA and beats the Chargers this week. I think this looks and feels like a really good situation. The Chargers are banged up in their offensive line. They just took a bit of a beating. Now, Washington does not have anywhere near the pass rush the Giants have. Nowhere near the defense that the Giants have. So I've seen a lot of you reaching out to me, giving me all of the, injuries. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater was lost before the season started. Joe Alt out in the offensive line, getting under duress, pressured all game long. Justin Herbert was hit repeatedly. We don't have that defense. We do not have Dexter Lawrence. We do not have Brian Burns. We do not have Abdul Carter. That Giant defense is legit. But I do like the matchup. I do like the setting for this one. It's not a true road game. The Chargers don't have that at SoFi. I do like the urgency that Washington will approach this game with after losing to the Falcons. I did want to read one thing real quickly. So Quinn wrote me and said, it seems to me like they were pretty confident they were going to beat Atlanta. And the players that sat could have played had it been a bigger moment for the organization and for Dan Quinn in particular. Yeah, I'm not buying that at all. I'm not buying that. That's nobody in this league thinks a game is a gimme. They just don't. They don't think the way fans think. They understand the nature of this league being week to week. They knew exactly what they were in for on Sunday. They knew exactly who Bijan Robinson was. They knew exactly who Drake London was. They knew exactly who Caden Ellis was. They knew that the quarterback was capable of playing at the level that he played at. By the way, somebody mentioned this to me. Is it true that Penix had the highest PFF score in the game? Who sent that to me? I would have guessed that Bijan Robinson or Drake London would have had it. 84.4, that's a really good PFF score, right?
Yeah, that is. But Drake London did score higher with a 91.3.
Oh, Drake London had the highest score?
Mm-hmm.
What was Washington's highest score?
Mariota, I believe, was number one. Let me look at the rest.
Mariota played really well. What about Debo? Debo had to be
Debo was up there as well, according to my recollection.
Was anybody on defense up there?
I don't think so, being real.
Here's the point, Quinn. They're not resting players that are ready to play a game physically, medically, because they think this is a no-brainer. Look, there are games at the end of an NFL season where you're playing a team that is legitimately quit. They're out of it. They're 2-12, 2-13. They have been identified now for 5-6 weeks as a truly horrible team, and there's wholesale changes coming. Those games you can perhaps go into with a little bit of confidence, but no. Nobody understands week to week and the changes week to week in the league than the people in it. So I don't buy that at all. I think Jaden was probably close to being cleared, but they didn't want to chance it because it wasn't 100%, which I think we'd all agree with. The Raider game felt like a game that they were going to win, although I think I was more confident with him than without him, but not at less than 100%. Hopefully he's at 100% coming up. So here we are, 2-2 through 4 games, a month into the season, approaching the quarter pole of the season. Man, it is a short sprint in sports compared to other leagues. It's the best. You just got to really enjoy it while it's here, because before we know it, it'll be the holidays and we'll be counting down the last 2 or 3 games. And before we know it, we'll be in that, championship game, in between week with no football for the first time in 4.5 months. I want to give you kind of my big picture on where this team is right now for this season. I'm not talking about what's ahead, I'm talking about for this season. And I want to hear yours as well. At 301-230-0980. I am still optimistic. I wouldn't say that I am very optimistic, but I was very optimistic before the season started, and I am still optimistic. To me, 2-2 through 4 games without your starting quarterback for 2 of those 4, with the injury bug hitting hard and hitting quickly and hitting often, that is a good spot to be in. They've won the 2 games they were favored to win, the 2 home games, and they've lost the 2 games that they were underdogs in. They were an underdog on Sunday. Once Jaden was ruled out, they became a 2.5 point underdog in that game. They are going to start to get players back beginning this week. Dan Quinn said yesterday, we're going to get to Wednesday before he provides another update, but he was arrow pointing up, not just on Jaden, but on Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, on Bates as well. The team did lose John Baptiste for a while and maybe the season with a serious injury, probably a pec injury. Now, Quinn's going to play this week, I think, like he's played the last 2. We're going to get to Wednesday, and he's going to give us an update that the real update's coming on Friday. However, what we will know Wednesday that we didn't know last Wednesday, and certainly not the Wednesday before, I think, just a hunch, is that Jaden's going to be a full participant in practice. And really, the focus will be on, was Terry a full participant? Was Noah Brown a full participant? Was John Bates a full participant? We'll start to focus on them, because even if he says we're going to see how Jaden does, he's going to be a full participant today, but we'll give you more of an update on Friday. That's smart. Make the Chargers prepare for the possibility of 2, even though if he is a full participant on Wednesday, he is going to be the starting quarterback, I would believe, unless there's a setback. There could always be a setback, but I think he's going to be the starting quarterback against the Chargers on Sunday, and that's where all of the reporting was during the pregame hours on Sunday and even in-game. It's too early to bail. For me, this is my view. I want to hear yours. 2-2 right now, approaching the quarter pole. What's your big picture takeaway on this team? Where is your level of optimism about the season to come? I'm still optimistic. Now, the defense, just like it was 4 weeks ago, is still an unknown. Some of you are convinced that Sunday basically told us that it's not an unknown anymore. The defense stinks again. But you're the same people in many cases that after the Giant game and after the Raider game had us as a top 5, top 10 defense in the league this year. So it's week to week in the results. It's week to week in our reactions. But to me, there's still a big question mark, because I believe that the defense has better talent. I think it's got better talent than it did last year, especially up front. Javon Kinlaw is a major, I don't want to be disrespectful to John Allen. It's an upgrade on John Allen, okay? They're better in their front 4. Dorrance Armstrong's a better player, although he was really coming on at the end of last year. They're better up front. They've been a better run-stopping team this year than they were last year, and that was the biggest concern about the defense. I didn't think they had a good run-stopping day against Atlanta, but as our caller, Aveen, said yesterday, and I think it's a really good point, they weren't good against the run, but they had good plays against the run. They did. They had 6 tackles for loss on running plays. They had the sack for 7 total TFLs, but that's a good job. And we've seen that even in the Green Bay game. They weren't horrible against the run. Now, could that change? It could, but I think Kinlaw freeing up Payne to be double teamed as much as he was last year, Armstrong's performance, Wagner as a run stopper, I think that they're better there. This is why, for me, I'm not about, even though before the season and during camp, many of you were like, oh, come on, Kevin, you can see it. Trey Amos is going to be, a defensive rookie of the year candidate. They're so much better than they were last year. The secondary is going to be awesome, and it's deep. Well, who were they covering in August? Terry wasn't even out there in practice. They didn't play in the preseason games. We needed to see what it looked like against Malik Neighbors, against, certainly somebody like Drake London on Sunday. Mikey Sanderstill, Quan Martin, and even Luvu have actually taken a step back. So that's a bit of a disappointment this year. Through 4 games, still early. So I think the offense, and I still believe in the offense as the part of the team that will lead this team, and I think to more wins than losses and enough wins to make the playoffs. That assumes Jaden plays the rest of these games. All right. That's obviously the key to everything in my optimistic, viewpoint, staying still optimistic. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I mean, the two things that I would point to say these are concerns and these are things that may, in a week or two or three or four, make me take a step back from, playoff team deep into the playoff contender, because I think that's still part of the equation for me. Let me be clear. I have not lost my optimism on this season at 2-2 after the loss to the Falcons. I still think it will be an offensive-led team when we look back on 2025, led by the quarterback more than anybody else. I still think they are going to win more games than they lose and enough wins to qualify for the playoffs. And then I think they're going to be a dangerous and a very difficult out when we get to the playoffs. But there are two things that I would point to that if I decided to kind of step back off of my very aggressive belief before the season, because I picked them to go to the Super Bowl 3.5 weeks ago, and I picked them to go 11-6 in the regular season. There are two things that could pull me back to something approaching, for some of you, maybe more reality. I'll tell you what those two things are when we come back, and I want your calls at 301-230-0980. We are 4 games into this season, a season that was the most anticipated we've had around here in decades. A season where where we had the highest expectations of any team entering a season in decades. Where are you now? What's your big picture view of where this season is headed? I'm still optimistic. I still think they're going to be a playoff team, and I still think when they get to the postseason, they're going to be hell to deal with because of an offensive football team and a quarterback that is outstanding. 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. So for the first time since 1947, that would be 53 and 25, 73, 78 years. Wait, what did I say? 53 and 25 would be 78 years. For the first time in 78 years, in the Associated Press poll, both Vanderbilt and Virginia are in the same poll. Two great academic institutions. They'll tell you too. Just ask them. Virginia and Vandy in those polls for the first time in, what did I say, 78 years. Virginia, I called last week. I called this early in the week last week that Virginia was going to be an absolute play against Florida State. They won the game outright. They play Louisville this week. Jeff Brom, what a coach he is, what a quarterback guru he is. Miller Moss is starting to get hot. He's the former USC quarterback. And Virginia is a 7.5-point underdog at Louisville. They're going to get run this week, and they're going to be out of the top 25. I think Virginia's good, too. They're a legit team. Louisville is going to run them this week, especially with just the afterglow of beating Florida State. Did you see that crowd rush the field? I mean, that looked dangerous at the end of that game. And Vandy goes to Alabama on Saturday. And there's a bit of a revenge tilt in this one. Last year, Vanderbilt pulled off the win over Alabama. Their quarterback, Vanderbilt's quarterback, is outstanding. Bama's a 10.5 and 11-point favorite. I think Bama's good. Ty Simpson, put this down, Max. Ty Simpson's going to be a really good NFL quarterback. And when I say really good, I'm not talking about an elite quarterback. He's going to be a solid starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins-like, for a long time. He is good. Alabama rolls Vandy in both. Vandy probably wouldn't fall out of the top 25 with a loss, but Virginia certainly would. Virginia, if they can go to Louisville this week and win to get to 5-1 overall, and they do have a loss in the ACC, but their schedule sets up the rest of the way where they should run it. They should end up as a one-loss team, and a one-loss team in the ACC, which would put them more likely than not in the ACC championship game. Virginia doesn't play Miami. They don't play Georgia Tech. They don't play Clemson. I mean, Virginia's got the easiest ACC schedule I have ever seen. They lost to NC State in a game they really had won. Stanford they beat. They're an ACC team. They had to play Florida State, and they won that game. Louisville is their last legitimate losable game, or the last legitimate game in which they will be an underdog. They have to go to Duke late in the year, and Duke's pretty good. But Virginia, if they can win on Saturday at Louisville, they're going to be in a great position to be in the ACC championship game and have a shot at a playoff berth. It's been a long time for Virginia, right? Since they've been any good. When's the last time Virginia was good in football? Seems like it's been a long time. But this game Saturday, they're 7.5-point underdogs, just begging you to take the points. Don't do it. Louisville can really move the football and can really score. And Virginia's weakness is actually defense. They're a very good offensive football team. All right, let's get back to the question at hand. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What is your overall big picture view now of how the rest of the season goes? We are 4 games into it. I am still very optimistic that this is a team that will win more games than it loses, okay, and enough games, meaning probably at least 10, to qualify for the playoffs and then be held to deal with when the playoffs begin. I think it'll be an offensive-led team when Jaden comes back, and Jaden's, operating on all cylinders health-wise. And certainly they need Terry McLaurin back. Okay, yes, I don't believe that Terry McLaurin is what Terry McLaurin believes he is on the hierarchy of wide receivers, but he's the best they have, and they need him back if they're going to be what they were last year, which is offensive-led quarterback-led, and a chance to win 10, 11 games, be in the postseason, and win a couple of games for sure. I am still optimistic about this team being that. There are two reasons why in 3 or 4 weeks you might get me to step off the limb that maybe I'm now on. I don't think I was on much of a limb a few weeks ago. Those two things are this. Number one, the defense has not, as many of you said before last week, has not revealed itself to be any better overall than last year's defense was. And that was part of the equation going in. I was, I wasn't convinced it would be better. I thought it was a huge mystery. I was hoping it would be better. And that hope that it could only improve from what it was last year hasn't been realized yet. That hope hasn't delivered yet. I think they're better talent-wise up front with Kinlaw. I do, but the jury's still out. And as I mentioned in the opening segment, part of the problem actually is that some of the players that we had high expectations for that would step up and be even better than they were last year in year 2 of Joe Witt Jr.'s system, also in one particular player's case, year 2 period of his career, they haven't done that yet. They still might. Mikey Sanders still has not played well. I mean, he played better on Sunday, I guess, with the interception. Quan Martin hasn't played at the level that he was playing at last year. Frankie Louvu has taken a slight step back. I love Louvu. That's been part of this. And certainly scheme, play calling, all of that. Latimore, let's move Mikey outside, Noah I inside, and bench Latimore. I'm for whatever they come up with. I just don't want to see the same thing over and over again that we've seen against Green Bay and Atlanta from a coverage standpoint. I'm going to talk about that in more detail on the show today based on something that Quinn said yesterday. So number one, I would step off that limb if in 4 more weeks it was very clear and it had absolutely revealed itself, the defense, to be just as bad as it was last year. Because point number 2 that would get me to take a step back is, man, the NFC is potentially loaded. Philly, of course, but I think the Lions are going to be really good this year. Their problem last year is they had all those injuries on defense. If they're healthy on defense, they are still an outstanding offensive football team. And I think the Rams have revealed themselves to be contenders here early in the season. Now, it's a bit fragile there because of a quarterback who's older. He's got to stay healthy, but he is the real deal at 37 years old. Is that what Stafford is? 37 years old? Because that team has weapons. Puka Nakua's on pace to catch 375 passes this year for 4,000 yards. That isn't it, actually, but he's got 42 catches through 4 games. I think we figured this out yesterday. What's he on pace for? 175, 180 catches?
Yeah, I think it was 173
like
was the final number that we decided
which
on.
Would shatter the Mike Thomas record from a few years ago.
Correct.
Michael Thomas had 149 in a season, one season for the Saints. And then he's on pace, I think, for 2,100 yards, which would break the record as well. Wow, has he turned into a baller. I believe Jaden Daniels is going to have a big season. Not the start he wanted with 2 games on the shelf, but fingers crossed he stays healthy and starts, doing what he did last year, which is lighting teams up week in and week out. So here we go. I'm still optimistic that this is going to be an offensive-led playoff team that will win double-digit games, which is what's going to be required to make the postseason. Max, where are you?
So I'm not bailing, of course. Like, it's too early to bail. You're a quarter of the way through the season. The team is at 500 at 2-2, along with 9 other teams that I think will, depending on how the arrows are going up or down. But no, it's not a matter of how you play right now. You can see that in a lot of teams. Like, look at the Chiefs; they're 2-2 as well. It's how you play in the playoffs towards the end of the year. It's about getting hot at the right time. That's a biggest thing in football. We did it last year, got all the way to the NFC Championship game. So it's about getting healthy now and getting through this horrible stretch that you're currently going under with, John Bates, Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin, pretty much everybody that helps you win these games and gives you an advantage over the other team. So I'm not going to bail. I think that we're still going to make the playoffs and still going to be a dangerous team and be a tough out. It's just the defense and the secondary. The secondary really, 3.5 weeks ago, I said top 3 they could be, and they might be bottom 3. So I was big time wrong on that one. I'm a little bit worried about Marshon Latimore and Joe Witt, just like we were talking about yesterday, the trying to determine whether it's a scheme issue or if it's players on the field. And I'm not really sure which is which, but once we get a little bit more data and just watching more of these games, that will reveal itself, and we'll kind of find out what needs to be done later this year.
I'm interested to see if a change or two is coming.
Yeah.
Look, Will Harris being out probably was a blow to them.
Big blow.
Even though they liked Jeremy Reeves, they really liked the way Will Harris was playing, except I think in the Green Bay game. I think part of the issue really is the Giant and the Raider games from a defensive standpoint. They just were a bit misleading, like a lot misleading. All right, let's start with Anthony in DC. Anthony, big picture through 4 games. Where's this season headed?
Before the season started, I was always cautioning beware because of the step up in competition. And I disagree with you. I think the pattern has been set. The stiffer the competition, the weaker the defense.
Right.
In order for us to get where we want to go, the offense is going to have to outscore the other opponent,
like they did last year,
competent opponents, like they did last year. I believe that this is counterintuitive to say this, but I believe that catching lightning in a bottle has been long-term counterproductive. When you stack what Peters has done on top of what Rivera failed to do with draft picks, I think we can legitimately say that we are 3 years behind in roster building. And on top of that, the potential issue that you may run into is, can you maintain the offense while trying to build up the defense? Because as you try to build up the defense, the offense is going to age out in some particular areas.
Look, it's not counterintuitive to say what you said. There's logic in it. That they went for it last year, and they went for it a bit, in the offseason as well. Now, remember, the 2 additions they made were on offense in the offseason in terms of trades, Debo and Tunsil. But I hear what you're saying. I would caution, though, last year's draft, certainly this year's draft, it's way too early, just way too early to have a definitive opinion on what these drafts will look like. We can now go back to 2022 and safely say that was not a good draft, and the trade back with the Saints was not a good trade, but because we've got 3 full seasons, the 22 season, the 23 season, and the 24 season. But for their draft classes, we have 1 full season for last year's draft class, I just don't see any way of calling the 2024 draft a real disappointment at this point. Too early, way too early. But thanks for the call as always, Anthony. Let's go to Cam. Cam, what's your big picture outlook for the rest of the year through 4 games now?
What's up, Kevin? Good morning. Mine hasn't changed. I was never as optimistic as other folks, saying we had, Patrick Surtain and Revis Island in the secondary. I was always 3-3 in division, fighting for a 6 or 7 seed, and I haven't changed, right? I think we have when everyone's healthy, a top-notch offense. I do worry about the defense, and I think I had this problem last year and over, the last half a decade or so. Like, even watching the game last night where Denver, I think, was getting home with four, they're playing the Bengals, but they're getting home with a 4-man rush. Like, we can't get home with a 4-man rush, but also at the current, our current position, don't have the ability to send 6 or 7 because we can't cover one-on-one. So that is concerning, but I do think, we have an offense that can score 30, 35. It's just hate that we have to do it. But my position hasn't stand. Like, that's where it is. But I am worried about the defense for sure.
Yeah. I think everybody that watched last year had to be skeptical that the defense could make a big enough jump to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Like last year, they were a Super Bowl contender based on where they got to in the postseason. But it was very obvious when they got up against Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game on the road that they were not good enough defensively to win another 2 games. But that doesn't mean that their offense can't, do it again. The lightning in the bottle last year is only lightning in the bottle if Jaden ends up being kind of a one-year wonder. Because I think if he's more than a one-year wonder, and I do believe that he is, then I think the team every year with him, as long as he's healthy, and he's already missed 2 games this year, so the most he can play is 15 this year. You get down to 12 or 13 games, and that's all he plays. Well, now you've disrupted the entire possibility for the season. And I know they went 1-1 in the games that he didn't play, which is great. And by the way, played well offensively. Kudos to Marcus Mariota, Cliff Kingsbury, et cetera. It's not the same thing, though. But if you believe that it was lightning in the bottle last year, and maybe you're just referring specifically to making it to the NFC Championship game, that you believe, too, that Jaden isn't a one-year wonder, he's legit and he's upper tier, and they're going to be a playoff contender every year. But winning 2 road playoff games, they had, 2 playoff games against 2 teams that were favored against them, but were also really banged up on the defensive side of the ball. So they caught a bit of some breaks there. Let's go to Bobby in North Carolina. Bobby, through 4 games, where is your big picture outlook for the rest of the season?
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
Hey, Bobby.
Same as it was 4 weeks ago. I was the same way, Kev. I mean, this is a playoff team. If we don't have any more big injuries, but Kevin, I'm just things that could derail this, like you said, the defense, and I just think we've got major issues. When DQ was hired and Joe Witt, their defense in Dallas was predicated on pressure and turnovers.
Yep.
Kevin, we're doing nothing. We're 0-2 in that deal. Pressure and turnovers. Okay? We don't have whatever they're trying to do, Kevin. It's not working. And this has been going on not just the first 4 games, but all of last year. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to come up with the same game plan to win games with the Atlanta. We've got to outscore people. You know what I'm saying? And, you got to stay healthy to do that. But I don't know if you saw – have you watched all 22 yet?
Not from Sunday, no.
Well, there's a still shot on Twitter that's been there since Sunday after the game. One of those third down plays.
Yeah, I know. The one where they left Bijan completely uncovered in the slot.
Well, to me, if you play a linebacker your zone, you go on third down, you go drop to the sticks. Both linebackers were way farther deeper than the sticks. Both plays were open, Kevin. And that part is just I'm dumbfounded that we can do that. I don't know.
I'm with you. I'm with you on this. I'm very look. We didn't know for sure the reason why last year's defense seemed to have decent players, but the output wasn't anywhere near good enough. And we talked about all off season. This could be a coaching issue. This could be a coordinator issue. This is going to be an important year for Joe Witt Jr. We've seen 4 games. By the way, their pass rush actually has been pretty effective this year in the first 3 games. It was not on Sunday. And I'm going to talk more about that because I think the reliance on a pass rush to mask deficiencies in a secondary when you don't have a special pass rusher is going to be problematic for them all year long.
Kevin,
yeah.
It's malpractice to put Wagner out there on
I know.
Bijan in the flat. Okay, it's just freaking criminal. He's good at making tackles in between the tackles. For him to be out there one-on-one with that, Kevin, in my life, I can't even comprehend how they can scheme that up and put him
Bobby,
in that situation.
Bobby, they feel. Let me tell you why. Okay, he plays every single defensive snap. Why? Because he's outstanding against the run. He's actually pretty good as a pass rusher, and he's like an extension on the field. He's like a coach on the field. They feel like him off the field is a bigger risk on all of the other downs than him on the field against 11 personnel and having to cover. You can't go. Remember how much they were in nickel last year? They don't want to be in nickel as much. And now you can say, why not Jordan McGee? Why not the young kid that they've been raving about for a while? I'm with you. But the answer is simple at this point. They haven't pulled Bobby Wagner off the field because except for in coverage, he is an A+ everywhere else. That's why.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But, Kevin, you got to put – if McGee had such a good offseason and he's healthy and he runs a 4.4, 4.5, Kevin, you have to put him out there.
Let's see what happens. Maybe there will be some changes. Maybe there will be some changes at corner. Maybe there will be some changes with Bobby Wagner not playing every single down. Yeah, Bobby, I'm with you. It's like I said yesterday, and you'll appreciate this. We all loved London Fletcher. Loved him. He was an all-time Iron Man. In those last 2 years, he was getting targeted. He couldn't cover. But yet, he was so valuable to the team against the run, being on the field as a coach on the field, you couldn't take him off because you were at a deficit when he wasn't on the field. That's where, like, when you just want to come down on Joe Witt Jr., it's like, hold on here. He can't take this man off the field because they'll suffer on early downs. But if he's on the field and is forced to cover on those downs, he's a liability. So they do have, by going with an older, by the way, a good player still, there is some medicine that they end up having to take by having him out there for every snap. Thanks. I got to get to a break. Everybody else on hold, stay there. I want your big picture outlook now that we've cleared almost the quarter pole of the NFL season. Where is this season headed for Washington? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch us on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button when you get there. And all of our football talk on the Team 980 is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today.
All right, it is Tuesday, September 30th. Here's what's happening last night. Monday Night Football doubleheader, and boy, did those games stink. In a battle between two 0-3 teams, the Dolphins, they beat the Jets 27-21, but it was not as close as the scoreboard would lead you to believe. Tua Tagovailoa looked back on his game, throwing for 177 and 2 touchdowns, and Darren Waller appeared to have risen from retirement with 3 receptions, 2 of which were for touchdowns. Not all sunshine and rainbows, though, for Miami. Tyreek Hill goes down in the third quarter after dislocating his knee and tearing multiple ligaments, including his ACL, according to NFL insiders. He will undergo surgery today at a Miami hospital where he is still currently. Second of the doubleheader, Broncos defense had Jake Browning and the Bengals in hell. And the Bengals defense looked like they were already in it as Bo Nix threw for 326 and 2 touchdowns, including 1 interception. Broncos win 28-3. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Den's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
There was something Dan Quinn said yesterday in his presser that I'm going to play back for you next hour, and it deals with coverage, but it really was, I think, a subtle clue as to how they think they can fix it, but I think it's a flawed premise. We'll get to that next hour. Grant Paulson's going to jump on with us at 11:35. We'll talk some baseball. The playoffs begin today with Grant, and we'll talk some Skins as well, and then Steve Sands at 12. He was at Bethpage Black all weekend long. We did not talk any Ryder Cup yesterday. We'll do that with Steve at 12. Bay in D.C. Bay, go ahead. The outlook, the big picture for you through 4 games as far as how the rest of the season will play out is what?
Thanks for taking my call. Kev,
Sure.
before Sunday, I had us going 11-6. I'm moving down to 10-7. And if Joe Witt and Latimore don't get it together, man, this season it can really take a serious fall. The offense is only to do with so much. I know we'll be getting back Cosme in November,
Right?
but this defense
Maybe
got
sooner.
to apply some pressure. I got to apply some pressure and stop the run, which they spent all off season making sure we can stop the run. And as you can see,
They've done a better job on that.
Not against Bijan.
Well, no, it was their worst run-stopping day of the year, but they did have 6 TFLs in the game, and but you're right, I did not think it was a good run-stopping day. And
Yes,
Bijan is special, and they've got a couple of other special backs they're going to face.
Yes, sir. I agree.
All
Thanks
right.
for taking my call, Kev.
Yeah, thanks, Bay. Appreciate it. Let's go to Rick. Rick's calling from Fayetteville. Rick, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
At the beginning of the season, I had us at 11-6. I'm going to stick with that. I'm optimistic that they can fix the problems on defense. I mean, if we made changes to the offensive line and to improve, so we need to make changes on defense also. Only thing that worries me is we've already lost to 2 potential playoff teams, Atlanta and Green Bay. And you still had Dallas coming up, Minnesota and Seattle in the NFC. So, yeah, you're going to have to win some of those games because I wouldn't be surprised, Kevin, we go 10-7 and miss the playoffs. But we got to beat those teams that we're going to be fighting for.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that Atlanta will be there as a playoff, contender at the end. I think that Penix Jr., I think this is his rookie season for all intents and purposes. But they have players. There's no doubt. They've got some decent players on that team. Yeah. All right. Sorry, we got to get to another break. Yeah, go ahead quickly though.
No, I had a question.
Sure.
Well, when Quan Martin was drafted, was he a safety or was he just a nickel back coming
safety
out of Illinois?
Yeah, safety.
He was a safety.
Yep.
Yeah, because I look at his size, he's sort of kind of small to be a safety, but
he was on that team with what's his face, who was drafted in the first round that year by Seattle.
One more thing,
Cam
Curl looks good in a Ram uniform.
I'm sorry.
I was saying Cam Curl looks good in a Ram uniform.
Yeah, he does. He does. He's playing really well. Thanks for that. All right, stay on hold. We'll get all of you, all right? So I appreciate you staying on hold. I think as of 4 games into the season, I'm still optimistic. This will be an offensive-led team. Jaden's going to come back. He's going to start lighting people up. They're going to win close games. It's going to be offensive-led. And I still believe this is a team that will win more games than it loses, qualify for the postseason, and be a very difficult team for others to face when we get there. What do you think 4 games into the season? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. By the way, how bad was that Monday night last night? I mean, Jets, Dolphins, Tyreek Hill done for the year. Wow, that was an odd injury. Just a simple, 5-yard out or whatever, 7-yard out. So if you were thinking maybe trade deadline Tyreek Hill, forget that. And then just how bad is Jake Browning? I mean, he's horrendous. I was thinking in watching Jake Browning in Cincinnati last night, the Bengals are a 2-1 team, now a 2-2 team, in a division which is gettable for everybody in it, except Cleveland, because they just don't have an offense. But why not go get Cousins? Why not go get Jameis Winston if you're Cincinnati? With those receivers, with that offense, you could be a contender. Now, they have a brutal schedule coming up. They have the Lions, Packers, and Steelers next 3. The Steelers at home, though, on Thursday Night Football. Like, you're still in that. I mean, I know that Atlanta basically doesn't want to trade Kirk for anything less than like a third, and you got to pick up a lot of the money. But Jameis Winston can be had. He's better than Jake Browning, isn't he? I think he is. I've always been a big Jameis guy. Let's go to Bones. Bones, where are you right now? Where's your outlook after 4 games for Washington's 2025 season? Bones.
My call. I'm on here, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Bones. I got you.
Okay. Yeah, shout out to Max, man. Thanks for taking my call, man. I'm like this, man. It's gonna be a struggle for us, man. That's only because of the defense, man. And they Cliff Kingsbury, man. He looked like he might be in a daze, man, as far as calling them plays, man, because we got 3 good young running backs, man, and he's not using them. These guys, man, we should be averaging 45 carries a game between the 3 of them, And right
45,
now the defense, man.
45.
45.
Yeah, I mean, you only run
15
typically
apiece,
60
man.
plays in a game. That's a lot of rushes. If they ran it 45 times, that would probably be victory.
Yeah, man, we got to get them 15, at least 15 carries apiece so they can get wound up, man. And like the defense, we lacking speed on that defense, man. We don't have no speed at all, man, especially coming off that edge and at the linebacker spots, man. And that's what's hurting us, man. Lack of speed at the linebackers and off them edges, man. But other than that, man, it's going to be a struggle for us, man. I think we're going to struggle to make the wild card, man. That's why I got it there right there, Kevin. Struggling to make the wild card.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kevin.
Bones. Appreciate it. Nothing reflects kind of the up and down roller coaster nature of an NFL football season with each of the 32 fan bases than what we're doing right here. Because I swear to you, last week after the Raider game, wow, sacked Geno 5-6 times. Dude didn't have any time to throw the football, shut down Genty. I mean, how about Dorrance Armstrong? And I think Dorrance Armstrong's been their best defensive player. Duran, Kinlaw. I mean, we were all wrong on Kinlaw. Dude's a badass. Von Miller looked good. He got his first sack. Week later, defense is terrible. Let's go to our guy, Greg in Gaithersburg. Greg, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, appreciate it.
Sure, Greg.
I'm not really too concerned. I kind of agree with you. It's 4 games into the season, and I've said this before when I talked to you. I think some of this may be due to how they played the players during the preseason. I think they're still trying to mesh a little bit.
Everybody did the same.
But I don't take – well, it doesn't – I don't care what everybody else did, but to me, it doesn't take the coaches off the hook. I think there were a lot of plays Sunday where Atlanta had 3rd and long, and they'd hit somebody underneath the coverage, and they were wide open, nobody around them. But the thing that bugs me the worst is when they got 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, and the corners are playing 10 yards off the ball, it just gives them the first down. But I'm not concerned. I need another game or 2 to really solidify how I feel if I think they're going to make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I think that's wise, for sure. Yeah, the funny thing is, they were very good on 3rd down. They were excellent on 2nd down. That was part of the problem the other day. They had a bunch of long 2nd downs that they ended up getting chunk plays on. Yes, 4 games is just so hard to know for sure. And I know I always say 1 week, but it's really 4, 5, 6 weeks. We still don't know. And when you're an injured team like Washington is, but not devastatingly injured, other than Eckler and Wise, those are big losses. I'm not discounting those. And now very likely John Baptiste as well. But you just, each week is a new week, and this is an opportunity. And I guarantee you, if they go into LA and they beat the Chargers, the conversation a week from today and a week from yesterday is going to be far different. And I do think they've got a shot with, hopefully Jaden back and maybe even Terry Bates and Noah Brown back. I think they do have a good chance to go in Sunday and win. I like the matchup actually against the Chargers. I did not like the matchup against Atlanta, as I talked about all last week. Let's go to Ross in Tampa. Ross, what's your outlook on this team after seeing 4 games?
I'll tell you what's good in the hood, Kevin, first and foremost. Excuse me for that.
Yep.
I gotta stop going to Atlanta to watch these games. 10 years ago, I went. Kirk Cousins, pick 6, Ryan Grant falls down. This time, Joe Witt falls down, man. Like, listen, this guy has a Super Bowl, something that Quinn doesn't have, man. I feel like that Super Bowl pedigree should have you put that defense in its place and have them perform well. Watching the game live versus on TV, I get a different perspective. I can scan the whole field and see what I want to see. I didn't like it, man. On the offensive side, without Jaden, man, I felt really encouraged. But I do have a question for you, because unless I missed the conversation, what's going on with our tackle? Oh, he was a tackle at Brandon Coleman. What's going on with him? Is he like in the doghouse?
I think they just were very impressed with Chris Paul, and they preached competition. And Chris Paul's actually played pretty well. Certainly did against the Raiders. And Brandon Coleman did not have a good game at all. Nobody did against the Packers.
I thought he got cut like 2 years ago.
I'm sorry?
I thought he got cut 2 years ago. Shoot, we got Braden Daniels still back there somewhere hiding.
Wait,
too?
who got cut? Brandon Coleman was a draft choice last year.
I thought Chris Jones got cut 2 years ago.
Chris Paul? No, Chris Paul's been on the roster. Chris Paul was
he's been like under the radar. I forgot all about him.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, cool.
He was this. By the way, if we look back on that, was that the 22 draft Chris Paul was picked in, or 21?
22.
22, which is Jahan Dotson, and the trade back, the one in which everybody, the Martys were playing chess against the Saints and Olave, and the trade back that yielded what? Jahan Dotson, Sam Howell, Brian Robinson Jr.
You want to know the most unfortunate thing about the whole draft?
Yeah,
Kevin?
7th pick, 2022. He'll be the guy out of that draft that might end up having the best career.
Just imagine if Braden Daniels would have worked out. You could have had a marketing thing with Braden Daniels, Jaden Daniels. Is he still on the roster? Because I actually had high hopes for him too.
Jaden is. I don't know about Braden. Thanks, Russ. Appreciate it. Let's go to Little. Little, go ahead.
Vision this year, but let me tell you how they can flip the script.
Wait, what did you say? We missed the beginning of that.
I said I had them fighting for the division this year.
Okay.
I still believe. But look, this is how they can flip the script, man. I'm going to tell you now. Pettibone was keen on matching up. And I'm looking at this team, man. I'm saying, okay, Latimore can't cover number 1 no more. Put him on the tight end. Lock him down on the tight end. If he can't cover the tight end, he got to get the hell up out of here. Okay, we bring in the extra cornerback on 3rd down, Ignawe. We take Wagner off the field. We move Luvu to the middle. Okay, we put Amos on the number 1 wide receiver. We put Sandusfield on the number 1 outside wide receiver. We bring Eminave in to cover the slack. Come on, it's common sense football, Kev.
Yeah, well,
that halfback in the backfield don't go nowhere. We sink Eminave. We send him every time. We punish the running back if he stay in the backfield. That's why I don't understand these grown-up folks, man. If you can't get Latimore to cover tight end, he don't have no goddamn, excuse my language, no business being in the league, man. But it's common sense, Kevin. It's with Pettibone.
Yeah, but what you want is what they ended up doing a lot of last year. They ended up being almost, nickel ended up almost being their base defense.
Right. But look,
and that's fine. But remember, you ended up getting run on to death last year when you were in nickel as much as you were in nickel.
You keep your man. You keep Wagner in there on 1st down. versus second.
Okay, but what happens on
run.
2nd and 8 and Wagner comes out in your base and you get gashed for 15 off the edge?
No, that's why you got Luvu moving in the middle.
Look, I'd like to see what they've seen in McGee. I'd like to see what they've seen in McGee.
I like to see him too, but guess what? They ain't listening to us on that.
Right.
I like to see him too, and the kid from UCLA. But look, one more issue. I'm gonna say something. Look, Kevin,
McGee didn't play at
from
UCLA.
Annapolis a call,
That's
man.
Madrano who
Check
played
on your
at
buddy.
UCLA.
Check on your buddy Robert from Annapolis, man. Come on, somebody give him a call. I ain't heard nothing from Robert. Hey, God bless y'all.
Yeah.
God bless
But remember,
y'all.
they had a slow start last year too. All right, Little. Appreciate it, man. Let's go to Dre in Baltimore. Dre, go ahead. Hello, Dre. Let's put Dre on hold. Let's go to Billy. Billy, go ahead.
Kevin, good morning. I'm afraid Robert may be trying to plan a parade that's never going to come. That would be my comment on Robert.
But what were the Ravens last year? What were they early? Weren't they? Didn't they struggle early in the season last year too? They're not as hurt. They're more. They lost to the Chiefs and then the Raiders. They were 0-2, and then they ran off. Hold on.
0-2.
Yeah, they were 0-2, and then they ran off 5 straight.
3-2. Yeah, I said 3-2.
I wouldn't count the Ravens out. Would you? Seriously? Would you count the Ravens out?
I'd count them in all the way to the AFC Championship. Then,
yeah. All right. What do you got on our team?
11 for 30 and 156 yards.
Okay, what do you got on our team?
Kevin, I am super optimistic. You know that. I love this team. I love the quarterback. I still believe he's the best quarterback in the league. I do not like the playbook where it puts him too much at risk when he's running the football too much. But his arm is so good and his eyes are so good and his brain is so good that he's top in the league. He's top in the league as far as his skill set goes. The biggest issue with this year is they never had their number one receiver in camp. They had nobody to cover, nobody to work on from a defensive perspective. The rest of their guys are number two. Debo's a good utility player, but he's not a number one receiver. Terry is. And because of that, the defensive backs have been slow to react to these top-tier receivers. Now, if you wanted to win the Super Bowl, you needed to bring in Terry at the beginning of camp.
Okay, but let's be fair here. The last 2 weeks without their starting quarterback and 1 week without Terry, offense has not been the problem.
Offense is not the problem. That's right.
Yeah.
But the quarterback wasn't great. Mariota was not great.
Yeah, he was.
He was good.
He was great last week, and he was really good again on Sunday.
He was a B- in both games. Jaden's A+ all the time. Jaden's A+ all the time.
Well, he wasn't A+ in week 2 against Green Bay, but he was pretty much an A+ all of last year.
We get Jaden back, we're going to have a heck of a good season. That's still the bottom line.
I agree.
Terry should have
I agree.
At the beginning of the year.
It could look a lot like last year. Its schedule's different. Teams are playing are different. Understood all of that. I think that, I think in many ways they faced in that short week Green Bay on a Thursday night on the road, one of their most difficult sort of circumstance games. I'm not saying that, at KC and Detroit at home and Philly twice at the end of the year aren't better teams or won't end up being better teams. I'm just saying that situation was a bad situation on that night. All right, Dre, finish it up for us. What's your outlook now that we've cleared almost the quarter pole? What do you see the rest of the season?
Hey, Kev, thanks for having me.
Sure.
2 points to make. I think we need to reestablish our identity on offense to keep our defense off the field and protect our players.
Right.
And I think we need to recalibrate this recalibration we're doing if this season doesn't turn out the way it should, because we only have 5 draft picks next year and 6 the next 2 after that. And our guys aren't getting any younger. So we might have to sacrifice next year and just get our team where it needs to be over the next couple of years or so.
Yeah, I don't think that you're going to do that with Jaden on a rookie contract. I think you're going to try to be as good as you can this year and next year for sure. But I'm looking up to see what the draft picks are, because didn't they deal somebody in Brian Robinson and get a pick back, obviously?
But that might be 20.
Yeah, they now have 6
though?
picks next year. They now have 6 next year. They got a first rounder, a third rounder, a fifth rounder, a sixth rounder that they got for B-Rob, another sixth rounder, and a seventh rounder. They traded the second and fourth to Houston for Tunsil. And then one of the six they got back was a sixth that was involved in the Marshon trade. Yeah, and the other Marshon picks were from this previous draft. Yeah, look, when you say reestablish the identity, what do you mean specifically?
The run game has been successful, and we're not utilizing it more. No matter if we're down 10 points or not, you can still keep the defense fresher and just limit the exposure by holding on to the ball longer.
I agree
and
with
then
that.
Our receivers can be open because the windows will be there.
Yeah.
But I just think Cliff has to learn the rhythm of the game and adjust on the fly, because talent for talent, we don't have it sometimes, and we just have to really see who we are and just pound the rock.
Yep.
But more easier said than done. But he just even if we get a flow going, I feel like he'll still give it up and try to get pass happy. And I'm like, you got to protect these guys. Marcus Mariota, when we needed him on certain throws in that Atlanta game, the balls were just not where they should have been to even be competitive.
That
for
throw
that
to
play.
Debo on 4th and 3 in the end zone was pretty perfect.
Yeah, for his fourth quarter game on the line throws are awesome.
Yeah.
But it's just
here's the problem that I think a lot of people would have, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Washington is currently the number 2 rush offense in the NFL. They are currently the number 2 yards per carry team in the NFL, but they're also 17th and in attempts, in rushing attempts. Now, you could say, well, in 2 games, they fell behind 2 scores, but we both know the Green Bay and Atlanta games, even though they were not anywhere near good enough to win either one of those 2 games, the scores actually never got really sideways where they had to get out of, trying to run the football. They didn't try in Green Bay. Part of that was the loss of Bates. We know that. And I think Sunday, they could have run it more and taken more of the pressure off their defense and possessed the ball more. Ultimately, they were doubled up in play count and time of possession in the first half. They ended up, on the 10-minute almost overall time of possession disadvantage, and I think they ran like 14 fewer offensive plays. It was one of my criticisms. I think it's hard to do it, and they scored 27 points. And they had some offensive success in the game, not on third down, though. Third down was a problem on both sides. But let's see, because last week against the Raiders, they decided we're coming after you. We're going to be physical. We're going to be downhill. We're going to be a running team. And they ran it a bunch, and the Raiders couldn't stop it. All right, when we come back, I want to play something that Dan Quinn said yesterday. He said 2 things, actually, specific to the defense, coverage, and pass rush. I want you to hear. We'll do that next. So Dan Quinn held his Monday press conference yesterday with all of the beat reporters. He was really disappointed, you could tell. I think he understands that they've got some issues defensively. John Kimes started it off by asking him about all of these explosive plays that teams have had, certainly in the Green Bay game, certainly on Sunday against Atlanta. I mean, there were explosive plays right from the jump against the Raiders. Their first snap was a miscommunication and a 45-yarder on offense, Geno Smith to Jacoby Myers. So this is what he said about, being able to defend explosive plays.
And then one of the themes has been those explosive plays in the pass game allowed. Why does that keep happening? What can you guys do to fix that?
Yeah, and we definitely have to. It's for sure, a combination of things. Like most things, when there's, some issues that you want to fix, you want to get it cleaned up as quickly as you can. On some, it could be as simple as a communication of a switch of a, receiver of 2 and 3. Certainly helps, from our pass rush when we're really ripping into that space to go. And then communication, like in line, how does it go? The calls quickly to, communicate to one another. So we'll work really hard to nail that. We have to, and we will get better at that for sure.
The part of that answer that was interesting to me, and I'm going to play another soundbite from Quinn here in a moment, is when he talks about the pass rush. And he says, when it really helps when the pass rush is, he says, ripping into that space. There wasn't enough pass rush against the Falcons on Sunday. And the problem that I think they have right now is there are issues in the secondary. There's no doubt about it. And only they know what those issues are. If it's truly personnel, or if it's something that they're doing schematically, or if they're relying on what they thought would be a significantly improved pass rush to cover up the coverage deficiencies. Now, during camp, the things coming out of camp from, everybody that was watching camp every day, and a lot of you guys was, man, the secondary is going to be the strength of the team. Through 4 games, it's not. And look, part of that is it takes time with a couple of new guys. Mikey's playing more inside than outside. Amos is a rookie. Latimore's not played well. Quan Martin hasn't played that great. They lost Will Harris, so there was an injury there. But the idea that, it really helps when the pass rush is ripping into that space. They were effective against the Giants and the Raiders with good pass rush against depleted offensive lines and situations that were kind of set up for very good pass rushing days. They actually got after Jordan Love a little bit in the second half of that game at Lambeau on Thursday night in week 2. I think the problem, though, is if you think that the resolution to the defensive coverage problems is pass rush number 1, and we all know as NFL fans forever, a great pass rush makes a very ordinary secondary really good. And less of a pass rush makes a really good secondary average. Now, the quick game has changed that. West Coast has changed that. The ball's coming out of quarterbacks' hands much quicker than it used to. It's not pure drop back, even on play action. There's still a lot of, quick bubbles, tunnels, and just quick game in general that, can alleviate and can nullify a really good pass rush. But to me, the problem with counting on pass rush this season is they don't have a special pass rusher. And to have a consistent threatening pass rush in this particular league without just being a very aggressive extra man pass rushing team, blitzing team, is you got to have somebody special, and they don't have anybody special. I like Luvu, I like Armstrong, but they don't have a special game plan for pass rusher. That's why very early in the offseason, when for a brief moment it appeared that Myles Garrett might be on the trade block, people were like, Washington makes sense. That's why Trey Hendrickson, for all of that time, Washington's one of those teams that makes sense. And by the way, the team was interested for good reason. We're seeing it play out right now. They don't have a pass rusher that really scares an opponent. It doesn't mean they can't scheme up pass rush, but to be a consistent pass rush team, just not only to be a good pass rush team, but to mask what you have going on the back end, it requires somebody special more times than not. And they don't have that person. That's where it becomes, I think, problematic week in and week out. There will be weeks in which you'll face a depleted offensive line. They're going to face one this weekend. No Joe Alt. Rashawn Slater was gone before the season started. He's one of the best left tackles in the game. And maybe they'll be able to get home on Justin Herbert. He was pressured, I think, more than any other quarterback in week 2. But I said this earlier in the show. This is not the Giant defense. We don't have Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Dexter Lawrence. The Giants have, or Thibodeau. They have legitimate, scary pass rushers. We don't have one here. So the coverage problems against the better offenses has to improve on its own, because relying on consistent pass rusher without a special pass rusher, or hoping that, 35, 36-year-old Von Miller is going to be 30-year-old Von Miller, is really not a good strategy. I'm not saying that they have that strategy, but they don't have a game wrecker. It's why they were trying to acquire one. It's why they were interested in Hendrickson, but the price was too high. And ultimately, Cincinnati wasn't going to let him go anyway. This was the other thing that Quinn said on the actual pass rush specifically.
Hi, Dan. In terms of, the pass rush yesterday, what did you see that you thought led to not as much success as you've seen from that unit?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I thought, when are we going to take our shots, when to go? I thought early on, they did a nice job of, getting rid of the ball quickly, to get, intermediate throws to go. But the ones that are down the field, Howard, those are the ones that we've got to capitalize on. I thought we could have stunted more to try to, put the offensive line in some disadvantages to go. When you have good balance like they had yesterday, you're not teeing off to go. But I do feel like, we've got to get them off the spot. We had a number of chances, and we didn't nail those yesterday like we had the week before. That would be my main take. And then, honestly, like I said, at the end of the game, not being able to close Howard on the third downs, I thought that was, the biggest factor here. We had some chances here to get them in some third downs that you can get off the field, and when we didn't, and Joe tried, 3 different ones: a zone, a man pressure, and so we got to be able to nail those when those come up. That's for sure.
Yeah, they tried different things. I mentioned that in my post game yesterday. It wasn't like they were super predictable defensively. They just didn't execute well, and we don't know if the unpredictability was the right unpredictability. But how about that part where he says, "I thought we could have stunted more to try to put the offensive line in some disadvantages." Yeah, the ball gets out quickly. Penix Jr. was incredibly decisive. He was really, really good in that game. And he had the ability to be decisive because guys were winning pretty easily and winning quickly. And that's part of the problem. Yeah, they were better the week before, in part because that was a lesser team that they played the week before. And maybe they're catching the Chargers. Like I say all the time, it's not who you play, it's when you play them. They lost Joe Alt. They lost Slater before the end of the year. They had a very difficult time protecting on Sunday. They're not facing the Giants' defense. The Chargers aren't. They're facing Washington's defense. It's a lesser defense. It's a less imposing, less scary defense from a pass rush standpoint. But there may be an opportunity to scheme up more pressure on Herbert this coming week than there was on Penix Jr. this past week. Go figure. Grant Paulson will join us next. We'll talk baseball playoffs, which start today, and we'll talk some Washington Commanders football as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. It's not October yet. Tomorrow is the start of October, but we do have playoff baseball. A quadruple header in wild card round today, starting with Cleveland and Detroit at 1 o'clock. Love this time of year. Grant Paulson's joining us right now. Before we get to baseball, I'm going to ask you what I just asked callers, and that is, we're 4 games into the season. What's your outlook on what this team will be over the final 13 and maybe beyond?
I think right now I feel about the team, Kevin, like I did coming into the season, which was that I thought they were going to be flawed defensively and playing a tougher quarterbacking and schedule overall. And I thought, while last year was a bit of a magical carpet ride, I thought Jaden Daniels would be exceptional. I didn't know if it would go as well as 12 wins and 2 playoff wins, but I think he'll mask deficiencies. I think he's going to play at a really high level, and they're going to be around a double-digit playoff team and a wild card hopeful. So I had them at 10 wins coming into the season, making a wild card berth. I still have them there. I think that they do have some fatal flaws on defense, and I think they've got to be brilliant offensively like they were last year if they're going to get to 10 wins. But I think they have a chance to be. I don't know about you, but I actually feel pretty good about what the O looked like with all the injuries the last 2 weeks with Mariota at the controls.
Yeah, I mean, considering that they were depleted without their 2 best players, they still put up 27 points on the Falcons. And, I got asked this question and I answered it on the air yesterday, but I'll ask you, do they win that game with Jaden and Terry?
I don't think so. It's certainly possible. I mean, it ended up being, for what it looked like, a one-possession game. I just think it was one of those games where Atlanta could have done whatever they wanted whenever they needed to. If they had to score 37 or 40, they probably could have done that, in my opinion. They had no answers on defense. They couldn't get to Michael Penix. They got 2 hits on him the entire game. I think they've been ultra-conservative defensively in calling plays since the Green Bay game over the last couple of weeks. And when you get pressure with 4 like they did against the Raiders pretty often, that's fine. But it certainly didn't work against Atlanta. They didn't cover well. I think there were a lot of reasons for that. But, yeah, I just think it was one of those games where it was clearly a bad matchup on paper against the Atlanta offense, as bad as they'd been playing. And to Zach Robinson's credit, he got to some of the stuff they hadn't been doing for a few weeks. There were no air yards in the offense. They hadn't really taken any shots. They hadn't tried to push the ball down the field vertically. They hadn't tried to get Bijan Robinson in space on linebackers nearly enough. And all of those things happened in the game. But, yeah, would it have been closer because you have better players on the field? I'm sure of it. I think it could have been a little more effective offensively, but I didn't think that was the problem. The one bugaboo on offense, Kev, was they were 1 for 8 on third down. And I think I looked at it today, and 5 of the third downs were 3rd and 8 or longer.
Yeah.
I mean, so those without Jaden Daniels are low percentage third downs anyway. Now, maybe he steals you 4 yards as a scrambler and gets you into some better down and distances, which is very possible. The one thing I'll say, too, to throw back at you about the offense that I actually have really high hopes for, they're so much more explosive in the running game, not only than they were last year, but I mean, I've not been this excited about how a tailback carries the ball. Watching Krosky Merritt, it's 6-7 carries a week, but every single week it's explosive. It's fun. It's stuff that's not blocked and schemed. Rodriguez hits a 48-yarder. They've got 3 different guys now who have 40-plus yard runs in the first month of the season.
Yeah, I agree.
They didn't have that club in the bag. So that gives me a lot of hope as they piece this whole thing together going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I just would like to see, he's got 29 carries, 172 yards in 4 games, averaging 5.9 yards per carry. I'd like to see him double that, to 58 carries in the next 4 games or more. And it's funny because I think I asked Smoot yesterday, if I told you one of those 2 backs emerged into a 15, 16, 17 carry a game guy over the next 4 games, or, at the end of the next 4 game stretch, who would it be? I think your answer and my answer would be the same. It would be Bill. Although if it ended up being Rodriguez, I think it still would be pretty effective.
I'm quite sure of it. Rodriguez has been excellent, dating back to preseason against ones. I mean, obviously the 48-yarder
last
was
year in
mostly,
the regular season when he got opportunities.
Yeah, he was more effective than B-Rob. I think he was about a 5-yard per carry guy. Frankly, Kevin, he's always been good when he's gotten chances.
Yes, I agree.
There's never really been a problem with him. Here's my nervousness about that answer. My anxiety would be, so the answer should be Bill, but there is a very clear frustration is probably not the right word, but there's a knowledge on the staff that in pass pro,
Right.
they're not comfortable yet.
Well, coach
and
him up
you've seen it
better.
show up a couple of times.
Coach him up better. Get him out there because him carrying the ball is really effective for this team. I think we've known that for a couple of weeks now. And by the way, it's not unusual for a rookie to struggle in pass pro and for them not to trust him in pass pro. But
by the way, like, figure out a way. I was talking to someone about this in football yesterday. I'm like, he's not the first guy, to the point you just made, who might not be great in pass pro, but every time he touches the football, it's electric. So find a way to both get him on the field on the right downs and distances and opportunities, and also help him continue to progress and develop in the other way. But it's not like you and I are asking for 30 carries. He's getting 4, 6, 7. We're talking about 11, 12, 15 carries. That's not a gigantic jump.
Right. You know what you reminded me of, and I bet you've already mentioned it because I know why you would know this, but they lost to Zach Robinson on Sunday as the offensive coordinator, part of the Shanahan and, of course, the McVay tree, which this, Quinn seems to have an issue with offensively. Have you already mentioned that?
I have. This is a thing, by the way, in my opinion. Like, if we're playing thing or not a thing.
It must be a thing. It must be. Now,
so
not every Shanahan
example, right?
McVay team has Bijan Robinson in the backfield, but still. Zach Robinson, by the way, as you know, was on a major hot seat last week with the performance against the Panthers. People killing him for being in the pistol as much as they were in the pistol. And were last year. You and I both had a problem with that because it just didn't seem right for who at quarterback. But anyway, we move on. I want to talk about first of all, before we get to the bracket and the matchups. I mean, what a comeback by Cleveland! What a regular season this turned out to be, and you're much closer to it, and you're involved in it. During the 162. But what were some of your biggest, kind of takeaways from the 25 regular season and things that will be all-time memorable?
Yeah, it was an amazing year. I mean, baseball's in a really good place. Now, it's got to be noted that we're headed toward an inevitable and certain work stoppage that's going to quell all of the momentum that they have created and built with attendance and TV numbers up. But it really was an amazing year, and I think it's a talent thing. It's a young talent thing for sure. I do think the changes to the game have largely been massive successes, whether that's the time of games. I saw a stat yesterday, 3 hour and 30-minute, 9-inning regulation baseball games this year. There were 3 of them. We're only a handful of years removed from hundreds of those over the course of a season. So that's been a smashola and a good success. There were no no-hitters this year, which isn't necessarily a great thing on its own, but the offense in the sport is up, and batted balls and balls in play is up. So there's some good things happening. For me, when you ask what I'm going to remember, I think my number 1 seed is Cal Raleigh hitting 60 home runs as a catcher. I mean, this guy, I don't know how what he did is possible. It is jarring because he's not a DH first baseman who catches a little bit. Like, this is a elite defensive framing full-time catcher who's excellent with a really upper echelon pitching staff, who then just so happened to, in his secondary assignment, go out and hit 60 home runs. And in one of the great statistical offensive seasons we've seen in the American League that Aaron Judge turned in, maybe, just maybe, overtake him for the MVP award in the AL.
Isn't he favored to win it now?
He is narrowly, I think, in most books. I don't know if it's every book. It was a dead heat going into the final weekend of the season.
Yeah.
I'll say this. This is one of those things, Kevin, where even in my head, in the back of my head, I tell myself, you're wrong. Like, you're wrong. I would vote for Raleigh because of the defensive position. Judge was better in almost every way other than home runs, and he just had a better season. But if you take him off the Yankees, I do think there's more talent. There's a lot more there. Whereas, the way I ended up doing it in my mind, runs scored, runs batted in for those 2 guys divided by runs for the team, it's about a 31 and change percentage point worth of the Raleigh. It's about 29% for Judge, which is negligible. I just think the Mariners have scored a lot fewer runs, needed Raleigh more. But that's going to be fun. And then the other thing was, as you said, and the breathtaking renaissances of a couple of these teams that don't happen. We've never seen a team erase 15 and a half games like the Guardians did against the Tigers.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Nats fan, I find it funny. As a national baseball fan, it was just eye-opening. But what happened to the Mets? Someone needs to do a think piece. Beth Wilkinson needs to do an investigation. Like, give me 200 documents on my desk.
No, we don't need to waste our time with that. But Soto had a great year. Remember at the beginning of the year, they were killing him.
Oh, they hated him. And more so in the media. There were some clubhouse issues with him and Frankie Lindor, I'd heard. They weren't kind of getting along initially. But I will say that the most amazing thing statistically maybe about this entire season, Juan Soto was 2 steals away from 40-40.
Yeah.
Like the 40 home runs, sure, clockwork, whatever. The OPS, the on base, the walks, that's what he is. Kev, he stole 38 bases.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me going into the year, he's going to have a good base stealing year, what could he do? I said, maybe he gets to 20. Like, that's nuts. That's another change in baseball. More steals, more running, can't throw over as much, bigger bags. Like, the stolen base is back in a way that it hasn't been in 20 or so years. But guys like Juan Soto being ultra aggressive and getting to almost 40 steals, that's pretty crazy.
By the way, I don't know what you're like, although with certain player, I know what you're like. But I root for Harper. I root for Soto. I really wanted the Mets to make it. It sounds like you didn't. By the way, he wasn't great in that final series against Miami where they needed to win 2 out of 3 and they won 1 out of 3. I wanted him to be in the postseason. I wanted to see him in that setting. It sounds like you didn't.
So I think I can kind of have my cake and eat it too. I always root for Soto. Like every time he's at the plate, I want a 440-foot opposite field home run. And I am 1,000% with you on Bryce. The booing of him coming home has always bothered me. I've always liked Bryce. All these guys that moved on, whether they walked in free agency or were traded, you give me good memories as a fan in this town, I'm going to root for you. So, yeah, I pull for him. But as a team, and more so really it's about that fan base, which is largely insufferable out at Nats Park. I was not rooting for the Mets at all. And I also just root for, like, what's fun, a little bit of almost like the college football in me, the chaos of it, so to speak. The Reds making the playoffs as a team that's not that good, but with some really fun talent. They've got a lefty pitcher who's got great stuff, went to the University of Virginia, and Andrew Abbott is going to get the pitch in the postseason. Ellie De La Cruz, I think, from just an electricity standpoint, has some of the great tools in the game. Him being in an October spotlight stage, I think is going to be really good for baseball. Like, I kind of wanted the chaos of Hunter Green, who throws 100 in October, and this Reds team that nobody really thought was playoff caliber. Not to mention, there is something to when you spend all the money in a sport where, you know, some teams' payrolls are a few $100 million, and some teams basically have a player's worth of money that they spend on their roster. Yeah. I almost always root for the team that doesn't really get to spend money in the smaller market, and that just happened to be the Reds squeaking in here.
All right, so let's go through these matchups. We're in the wild card round, and it starts today with the incredible comeback. Cleveland 15.5 back on July 8th. They were 10.5 out on September 1st. They beat, I think, Skubal a couple of times down the stretch, but he could pitch twice for Detroit. Who do you like in this series and why?
The Guardians are the better, hotter team. I'm going to take Detroit because of Tarek Skubal. I think, you know, game 1 he goes. That's a scheduled win as far as I'm concerned. Like, I lock him in. You cannot do this with more than maybe 3 or 4 pitchers in the entire sport at this point in October, because it's all about bullpen innings now, and it's 4 or 5 good innings at a time from starters. But I think Skubal, you pencil in for a quality start and maybe like 7 innings and a run or 2 today. Now, if they get to him and they beat them, it's over. I think Cleveland wins the series. But I assume Skubal pitches a gem, they win, and in this short wild card round, it's just a dramatic benefit. So I think because of the ace, Detroit is going to be my pick despite coming in cold.
Boston and New York in the American League. The Red Sox seem to be the underdog in this one. You know, I think legitimately so. Who do you like and why in this series?
I like Boston better. The Yankees come in very hot. They'd won 10 of 11 going into the final days of the season. But look at who they played. It was Baltimore.
Orioles, White Sox. Yeah.
It was they were beating up on 3 of the worst 5 or so teams in the American League. So I think they just kind of took advantage of the schedule more than they actually. Great pitching matchup, by the way, in game 1 with the lefties, Garrett Crochet and Max Fried, who are 2 of the best in the sport with sub-3 ERAs. But give me Boston to upset the Yankees in that series.
All right, so you like the two, teams that were not playing as well as their two opponents in the American League. What about the Dodgers in Cincinnati? You've already said Cincinnati, not a good team. Let me just ask one quick question about the Dodgers. Will Kershaw be a starting pitcher in the postseason for LA?
I think he will make starts for sure. I think it's going to take a lengthier 7-game series as we get deeper into the month.
Will they use him out of the bullpen in the meantime?
I would imagine so, yeah. I think he'll get multi-inning opportunities. And then, I won't call it like an opener, but there's going to be games where he goes out there and you kind of let him go as he's good. As I said, we just 2 years ago or so, I think for the first time, saw bullpen innings overtake starter innings in October. And so he's actually ultra valuable to have length, to be from the left side, to be used in that way. But if you're asking me like over under a half start for him, I would be stunned if he doesn't start a game in October.
All right. So you like the Dodgers in this short series against the Reds?
I think they roll. Yeah, I think they roll.
What about San Diego, Chicago?
It's my favorite series. This is the hardest one to predict. Padres bullpen's exceptional, even despite losing one of the best relievers in baseball about a month ago. I think that they win this series, and I think it's tight, but their bullpen, for me, makes them a legitimate threat to win the whole thing.
In the American League, Seattle and Toronto are sitting there waiting for the two winners. Who comes out of the American League?
I really like the Mariners, honestly. I think that, they hit enough, and they certainly have the power enough. Raleigh's going to have a big October. They don't win without his bat. But that pitching staff, Kevin, it's about, to me, swing and miss repertoires, elite strikeout stuff in October. They've got it in spades. It's arguably the deepest rotation. It's one of the better back ends in the entire league. I like the Mariners to come out of the AL.
And then if it is Red Sox, Blue Jays, how good are the Blue Jays? I mean, they barely held on to win that division. They certainly weren't supposed to win the division when the season began. What does that look like if we get to, either matchup, Yankees, Toronto, or Boston, Toronto?
Yeah, I think they're on upset watch either way, frankly. I mean, the first answer, how good are they? They're exceptional, right? They finished the number one seed in the league for good reason, over 162. But that's one team, based on how they finished, where I am a little bit more nervous. Like, there is an alarm for me. Some of the other clubs, that were kind of middling, that were wild card caliber, I think you can kind of flip the switch. I didn't love the way it went for Toronto down the stretch. They also had to burn Gossman to end the regular season, obviously, as they were trying to win the division, so they didn't get to align things right up front, but they'll now have the break to do that, which is helpful because they did, win the division and get some time off depending on, the number of days and how they line up their bullpen. But I would expect that the winner of Yankees Red Sox beats them in a competitive series.
I mean, if we see a Dodgers Phillies, best of 5 in the second round, that will be heavyweight matchup for sure. Is this the year for Philadelphia or not?
I like the Phillies a lot. I mean, I saw them at Nats Park 4 times in a row, going back a little over a month ago now, and felt like while watching them, and it was right before Wheeler got hurt and got bounced, but felt like that's what a World Series team looks like. They've got everything. And, they're a lot like, these teams where it's almost like the Ravens or the Bills, where year in and year out, you throw the roster out there on the field and you go, this is as good as it gets. You can win 14 games in a Super Bowl, and they haven't been able to connect the dots yet. I do like the Phillies to come out of the National League. I think they've got, even without Wheeler, as deep a rotation as anybody in the NL. They come at you with 4 really good starters. If there's an undoing, it's that I don't completely trust their bullpen, but I think they're going to hit. They used to rely a lot more on power even than they do now, but you still got Schwarber with over 50 bolts. Harper's a big game guy. You can go up and down that order. Turner just won the batting title, hitting 304, which, by the way, is the lowest batting title in the National League since the 1800s, which is wild. But I don't see a major flaw there. I just think they're the deepest, best-built roster.
All right. Lastly, the team that finished with the best record, the best run differential, the Brewers, who just would, at one point this summer, they were as hot as anybody's ever been. Do they emerge out of this thing? Can they win the World Series? Can they get to it?
So here's where I could be loud wrong. I mean, they were so damn good. And like we just talked about the Brewers, like the Phillies rather, the Brewers pitching was better. I mean, they also, it's not power. It's not run productivity with slug. It's working counts, grinding pitchers. Everything is earned, on base percentage and slapping the ball around and putting the ball in play. It's all the old school stuff that you're going to like to watch if you're a baseball fan over the years. I just don't know that they have the firepower. And as good as their staff was, when you put them up against some of these frontline aces that cost money or, top of the board type pick stuff, I think it's third starters who all threw really well. And I just wonder what that looks like in October. So the formula worked for an entire season, but as you've seen in the years past, they get to the playoffs and it's a little bit of a different beast, right? That's kind of my prediction.
Okay.
We'll see if it comes to fruition.
Do you have the Phillies winning the whole thing?
I've got the Mariners, which is a little bit sneaky and surprising. I've got the Mariners beating the Phillies in the World Series, but yeah, I think the Phillies are, for me, the most complete team on paper.
Thanks for doing this. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Appreciate you, Kev. Good talking.
All right. Grant Paulson, everybody. 106.7 The Fan, Grant and Danny, every day at 2 p.m. All right. Steve Sands next. He was calling the Ryder Cup all weekend long for NBC. We did not talk about the Ryder Cup. It was awesome to watch. Steve will join us next. That was Shane Lowry rolling in a birdie putt on 18 to knock off Russell Henley and to retain the cup. They ended up getting another full point and beating the Americans over the weekend at Bethpage Black 15-13. But man, it was a rout over the first 2 days before the drama of day 3. I know it coincides with football season, and that makes it rough for a lot of you that like this event. I watched a lot of it over the weekend. Steve Sands was, of course, a part of the coverage. He joins us right now. Steve would rather talk about the Atlanta loss on Sunday, but I haven't talked about Ryder Cup. And I just want to start with this simple question. Why are they better than us at this event?
It's a great question. First of all, two things, Kevin. The iPad may or may not have had the Sunday ticket on and watching the Falcons and Skins game while we were in the booth on
Yeah,
Sunday.
I know. You do that all the time.
Just don't tell the boss.
Yeah.
I think the boss kind of knows, though.
Did you let out? You like
those monitors in the trucks? They definitely have football on somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. You've told me this before that you guys that are on the PGA Tour, especially in these fall events, these big events when football's going on, you're or like during the NCAA, during March Madness, you're watching, a lot of those games. I mean, have you ever, like in the midst of calling something, just blurted out, "Oh my God, Chris Rodriguez, just keep going, go"?
No. Thank goodness.
You're a pro.
No, it's kind of like cursing. Hopefully, it never happens. Even though it happens all the time. No, that has not happened. But the other thing I was going to tell you was, but we do have a little sidebar of whatever NCAA during the Valspar Championship. I can't tell you how many times I've said Justin Thomas for birdie at 12. And then look to my left and see a last-second shot and not be able to react is very strange. But anyway, the other thing I was going to tell you was to solve all those issues, you got to be married to Val Sands. Val Sands allows us to have 3 televisions in our family room set up nicely. Doesn't look like a sports bar, very classy, but it kind of solves the issue of in-game, red zone,
like
and Ryder Cup.
It's very classy. I love that. Yeah, there was a time in my marriage very early on where and you'll appreciate this, Maryland basketball was on probation. Okay, these are the, post-Bob Wade years, the early Gary Williams years. Yep. And in 1994, when they got really good again, she was like, "I didn't know that you were a Maryland basketball fan." I'm like, "It's actually my number one, sweetheart, and get used to it. These March runs are all enveloping and we'll have multiple TVs on, but it'll look classy." All right, continue.
The reason that they are better, it's a great question, kind of unanswered, really. I mean, here's what I think. They're just better at the whole thing. They're not better players, Kevin, but they're just better at the entire operation. They have a system with their captains and vice captains. They do things correctly each and every time. Now, they don't win every time. American players 1 through 12 are better pretty much every year. They should be better, should be favored pretty much every year. But the Ryder Cup has gone to Europe 6 of the last 8 times it's been played. It's just crazy. And I think it's part preparation, Kevin. I think it's part picking the right captain, having the right vibe. Very difficult for Keegan Bradley as a contemporary at 39 years of age, who plays with these guys all year, to make very difficult decisions that captains and coaches have to make as far as pairings, as far as sitting someone, delivering news that not necessarily is very comfortable. Luke Donald is a young guy, but he's a half generation ahead of the guys who played on the team. He's in his mid-40s. So does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult for Keegan Bradley to say to Colin Morikawa and Harris English, "You guys just lost 5 and 4 yesterday. We're not playing you today." But he put them out there again, and they got waxed again on Saturday, because it's got to be an awfully big challenge for Keegan Bradley, Kevin, to look at Colin Morikawa and Harris English, who they might be playing with this week at the Sanderson Farms Championship, or last week or 2 weeks ago at the Tour Championship or in Napa, and have to make very difficult calls. So I just think all around Europe is better at it.
Yeah, so I want to go back to Sunday. Sunday started with an injury to Victor Hovland. He woke up with a neck injury, couldn't play, and they have this thing called, the envelope rule, where basically each team, rather than seeding the point, based on an injury and defaulting that singles match, this is a long-standing rule, part of Ryder Cup. Each team gets a half point. But explain how the whole thing works in terms of the player on the U.S. roster that gets left out.
Yeah, it's been a long-standing rule. The rule needs to be changed first and foremost. But the Ryder Cup is a lot different than it was back in 1927 and back in 1971 and all these other years. It's just completely different events. So the way it works is each team just in case there is a scenario where a player can't go for whatever reason, family or health, they have to put a name in an envelope and it's sealed. And if a player can't go, then the person who is matched up with him on the other team, in this case, Harris English for the United States, was going to go in the 12th match with Victor Hovland. When Victor couldn't go, they unseal the envelope. It says Harris English, and Harris English can't play, and each team gets a half point. Here's the reason why that rule has to change, and it has to change, Kevin. You cannot be in professional sports. You can't be in Little League, in my opinion, but in professional sports at the highest level, if you can't go, if you can't compete, if you're not available, you can't earn anything. That's just not how sports work.
Put them a half point closer.
It put them a half point closer. It didn't make a difference. That is not why the Americans lost. But since it did get a little closer there at the end, that rule now really comes into the fray of conversation and discussion, and that rule's got to be changed. If you're only as good as your availability. You know, it would have been great to have Jaden Daniels on Sunday at Atlanta. Probably would have been a different outcome. Maybe not, but you never know. And you can't just give a half point to the Europeans when Victor Hovland couldn't play. That's wrong. I think everybody knows it's wrong, and I think it's going to be changed.
Yeah, it was absurd. I mean, and it means a lot, even, you know, if it's, 10-6, at the end of Saturday, or 9-7. But when you put a team that is at 11.5 and 2.5 points away from retaining the cup, a half point closer, it was absurd. It's almost like juice boxes and goldfish time for,
That's
as you
exactly
said,
right.
Little League players.
Now,
It has to be changed.
I totally agree. But here's the thing that I think there's, in my opinion, sounds like your opinion as well, there's no debate that the team that has the player who can't go should not earn a half point. I think that's really not up for debate. What is up for debate is what should happen in that match. Should they only have 27 points instead of 28 and not have that match count at all? Should the other side get a full point? Because let's face it, in tennis, one-on-one, mano-a-mano, woman against woman, if a player has to withdraw or has an injury or can't go, the other player advances to the next round. So that's up for debate, whether the Americans should have gotten
that's the correct answer.
Point.
If Victor Hovland plays for the European team and can't go due to injury, then it's a walkover. It's a default. And Harris English wins that match, and the U.S. is awarded a point.
Well,
that's
it's
competition.
Funny you say that, if that's exactly right. In my opinion, now you could debate that side of it, what should happen with that half point or full point. But to me, giving a half point to a team that has a player who can't go is 100% wrong. Just think about this. In all other aspects of golf, if you just want to do apples to apples, because golf, all the way down the line, can't compare it to tennis or the other sports, whatever, because you can't do that to the other sports either. But in this particular sport, Kevin, if you're playing the junior amateur, if you're playing the mid-am, if you're playing the U.S. amateur, the U.S. women's amateur, if you can't go, that other player wins the match. So in the Dell match play, remember when it used to be in Austin and La Costa, the WGC Dell match play championship? If a player couldn't go, the other player would advance. Now, this isn't advancing. This is a point system in the Ryder Cup.
It's not a bracket.
But I'm with you 100%. If another player can't go for whatever reason, I don't think there should be an alternate. I don't think there should be any other scenario other than the other team gets the full point. By the way, I love Victor Hovland, and I'm not questioning him at all because he is a gamer, and he's a great guy. But he didn't have a problem lifting the Ryder Cup when they won. He didn't have a problem drinking a beer when he won. So, it's not like he's going across the middle on 3rd and 6 here. Let's tee it up and see what happens.
Right. We're talking to Steve Sands. So before we get to the lack of drama on the first 2 days and the drama on the last day, you were there. Tell us about the Bethpage Black New York crowd, which got a lot of criticism, including from Tom Watson, who basically apologized to the Europeans for the behavior of the American fans in New York.
I thought it was embarrassing for the Americans. I thought United States embarrassed itself with some of the language. Look, me and you we're huge sports fans. You know, I've heard it all at sporting events, and we heard it all last week. I have no problem with people roughing people up, people having a good time, people drinking too much, people saying things that might be a tad inappropriate or a tad coarse, or throw out a curse word in front of a little kid or an old lady, whatever you want to do. But if you're chucking beers at Erica McElroy, if you're saying things that are so personal in their personal life, now I get it. They're public figures, they're athletes, and fans can say whatever they want. But have some class and, you know, have a little bit of grace. Have fun. You know, there was a great moment where Rory was trying to button his button. And, you know, we've all been there. We're all trying to button the button with one hand, and we're not be able to get it in there. We're wiggling around like a 4-year-old who's got to go pee and that kind of thing. And this fan yells, "You don't need a button to choke, Rory." That's sports. That's sports fans. That's fun.
Yeah.
Rory laughed his butt off. Tyrrell Hatton was laughing. Shane Lowry was laughing. That's cool. But to just say horrific, crass, rude things, to me, that's just not being a sports fan. That's social media and people being idiots and that kind of stuff. And the other thing is the PGA of America, and it wasn't just the fans who embarrassed the United States of America around the world at this massive global sporting event. It's a huge, huge global sporting event. The PGA of America, Kevin, hired a woman to be kind of the person on the first tee to kind of get people jacked up, kind of like,
right.
you know, like a DJ kind of thing. But she's a comedian kind of actress, I think, is what she does for a living. And she's yelling, "F you, Rory," to the crowd to get them riled up. What are we doing here? I mean, Rory McIlroy is standing
I didn't
on
know
the
that.
first tee, Kevin. She had to be removed from the position. She was not fired or let go, whatever you want to call it. But whatever she was not there on Sunday because, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, it's sports, for goodness sakes. Have fun. Have a great time. Drink all you want. And rough up whoever player you want to rough up. But man, oh man, have some class, for goodness sakes.
So I hear you completely, and I think that was part of the story going in, is what was this crowd going to be like? Because we as American sports fans understand that the New York sports fan is a bit different. Philly, New York, a bit different than kind of everybody else's, which, by the way, is what makes our favorite Maryland basketball fan base so great. There's a lot of Jersey, New York, and Philadelphia in it because so many of those kids that go to Maryland are from there. You know, I would say this. They shouldn't bring their families to this event. It's just like Coach K stopped letting the Krzyzewskis go to Cole Fieldhouse and Comcast Center, and Mrs. Boozer, you know, and everybody else. They understood what the landscape would be like. I think they should have had a little bit more of self-awareness, and families probably shouldn't have been there for the European players.
Yeah, I'm with you on everything until that last part. I mean, look, you and I are both good friends with, you know, some of these Maryland coaches and what they've had, and what Dana Williams had to hear, what Ann Turgeon had to hear, you know, what Kevin Willard's wife had to hear, and their kids had to hear. I get all that. But it wasn't directed at them. It was directed at the coaches, whether it was Cole or Xfinity or the players, whatever it is. When you have the family thing is part of the Ryder Cup. That's the deal. And it's always been that way. You know, the parents are inside the ropes. I was with Jerry McElroy last week, having to hear his son hear things that you would never in your life want to hear. Again, this is out of the sports realm. I'm not trying to be soft. And I know we're a little softer in D.C. than they are in Philly and New York. I get that. But I'm not trying to be soft. I think it's fair game to say whatever you want. But if you want to act like a buffoon like that, that's your prerogative too. And I think that should be called out. And I think this, the United States around the world, people were watching it going, okay, well, I mean, give me a break here. Like, it was just a little over the top. That's all.
Yeah. We're talking to Steve Sands. So, certainly Shane Lowry when he closed out Henley said it will not be the same at Adair. Adair is one of the most beautiful. Huh?
I don't know about that, Kevin. I've been to
especially the Irish, right?
Give me a break. I don't know if there'll be the personal attacks, but I promise you, I have been to a lot of Ryder Cups on international soil in Europe, I'm telling you, Kevin, I know it won't be as bad. So Shane is technically right, but believe me, the Irish will get jacked up for that.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, we are 12 years away. Hopefully, we're all around for it.
Oh yeah,
from the Ryder Cup being played at Congressional, which will be insane. All right,
and by the
quickly.
way, we love DC, and we are homers to the core. They'll rough up the Europeans that week too.
Have you ever seen on Friday and Saturday that many putts go down? It seemed like every single time they lined up for, anywhere from an 8-footer to an 18-footer, they just were all going in.
I was in the booth Friday morning when we came on the air. We brought us on the air. It was me and Terry Gannon doing the play-by-play.
Yep.
With Nick Faldo and Nota Begay. And about halfway through.
By the way, the audio was a bit off. I don't know if you guys knew that. It was a bit frustrating. The audio was lagging.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, we know about it. we heard all about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's really no one in particular's fault, but
Right.
we heard. We definitely heard about it, without question, from friends like you and plenty of others. About halfway through the morning session, so we came on the air at 7, first ball in the air at 7:10. Place is raucous, everybody's going crazy. At about 9 a.m., we're in commercial, and I look over at Faldo and I go, Nick Faldo is one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. And I look over at Faldo and I go, what is going on here? He's like, it's just one of those days. And he's like, I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like this before. And we've seen a lot of Europeans make a lot of putts, Ian Poulter, Sergio Garcia, down the line. But Friday morning was like the Americans just got roundhouse, Kevin. They got bullied. It was nuts. And they're not better players. They're just better at this entire thing. That's it.
All right. Well, let's go to Sunday, and there's no chance. And then the half point awarded to each team because of the Hovland injury. It's 12-5. They need 14 to retain the cup. The U.S. needs 14.5. So it's a foregone conclusion that the Europeans are going to retain the cup, and probably by a sizable margin. As the day unfolds, when did you have kind of a sense that maybe there's a chance here? You know what? I want to back up. How badly did Scheffler need to win that match head up against Rory?
Had to be. The Americans had to win those first few matches just to see some red on the board. And I'm always fascinated. I've told you this before. I'm fascinated in sports at momentum, especially in golf. I get it in other sports, but in golf, momentum, I'm not a psychology major. It just intrigues me how and why there can possibly be momentum in golf, but yet there is. So you see those early guys on the board. The Americans stacked the lineup. They had to put red on the board early, and they did. So the Scheffler match versus Rory was massive. But there's always, I said this on Saturday, and I said this on Sunday morning. I said it on Sunday when we came on the air at noon, just before the first ball went in the air. There's always a day, no matter what the score is, there's always about 30 or 45 minutes on Sunday at the Ryder Cup where you look up and go, well, if that goes that way, if that goes that way, if that goes that way, they got a chance. So to me, the entire day was get off to a good start for the Americans, which they did, and then the Lowry match was the key. If Lowry misses that putt on 18, Kevin, the Americans – I'm not going to say probably.
If Henley
makes
won the putt, let's start with that because he left the last two on 17 and 18 short.
But it was Lowry before that. If he doesn't do what he did on 18, then I have no idea what's going to happen after that with Henley and Griffin and those guys. But
Henley was matched up against Lowry. I'm saying Henley could have closed him out by making that putt at 17, and then he left the one at 18 short as well.
He could have, but he didn't. And the key to that point is that I know Henley missed on 16 and 17 and had a chance to close it out. But if Lowry doesn't sneak that in there, then that changes the entire narrative of everything that's behind them. And that was enormous. Now, It was the clinching point, and I get that. But if he doesn't turn that around there, I think that is probably going to be the greatest comeback in the history of the Ryder Cup, in my estimation, as we were looking at the board. But it's a weird deal with momentum. The players see that red on the board, the players see the blue on the board, and they don't play any harder, they don't try any harder. They're just feeling it, and it's just like every other sport. And the Henley-Lowry match for us, when we were on the air on Sunday, that was the match. As everything was unfolding, everybody during commercial break kept saying, "Oh, this is the one that's going to matter the most."
Right.
And when Henley was up and he was on 16 and had a chance to win it,
yeah,
then we were all like, wow, the Americans are actually going to come all the way back here. But he didn't close it out on 16. It's not Russell's fault that they lost, but collectively the Americans lost it. But that match was the key.
I totally agree, but I'm just curious, were you and the others weren't I was like confident Lowry when he got to 18 was like, this guy just delivers all the time. I did not think there was a chance he was going to miss that putt. Did you?
Well, I had the odd holes. So on 16, I thought to myself, if Russell doesn't win this, Shane Lowry's going to steal it. And Russell didn't close it out. He couldn't close it out. And I remember thinking on 17, Russell had another chance at the par 3 to get it done. And didn't. And when it got to 18, wasn't my hole. And I was just kind of sitting there watching it. And I'm like, you know what? Shane Lowry's going to close this out, because that's what Shane Lowry does. Not that he is the greatest player in the history of the sport, but for whatever reason, when the money's on the line, Kevin, Shane usually comes up big, and he certainly did this. Oh, man, he does.
You talked about the pressure. Scheffler it was on Saturday, I'm pretty sure. I think it was the Saturday 4-ball. It may have been the Saturday foursome. He shanked a shot on 18. He literally shanked one like any of us would. That's Scotty Scheffler. I was like, oh my God, they feel this more than any other event they play.
It's unlike any other event because it's an individual sport, and once a year you're playing with the team. Your schedule's a little bit off, your preparation's a little bit off, because you're not doing it the way you want to do it. You're doing it the way the team needs to do it. That, to me, is the biggest problem the Americans have. They overthink this thing, Kevin. It's golf. Fred Couples won 3 straight President's Cups. Different event, President's Cup versus Ryder Cup. I get it. But the philosophy Fred imposes on his players and his team is the correct way. Alleviate all the pressure. You handle all the heat, and go tell your 12 guys, by the way, 12 of the greatest players in the world, go tell the 12 guys, play golf. I got everything else. Who you want to play with? How do you want to practice? Go ahead. Go play. Don't force tee times. Don't force partners. Don't force practice routines. I know you have to do a dinner and you got to do an opening ceremony, so it's a little bit thrown off. But, you know, if Scotty Scheffler likes to wake up and work out and then go eat something and then go chip and pitch and then go back inside, or whatever he does as a routine, let him do his routine for the most part. Scheffler and all the American players felt the pressure, and they always do. And the Americans put more pressure on themselves last week, at the Ryder Cup than any other time they play golf. And that includes major championships, because it's not just them. It's their partner, it's their team, it's their captain, and it's the America on their red, white, and blue everywhere. It's difficult. But Scotty was 0-4, Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
The number 1 player in the world. The Americans ended up losing by 2, and Scotty was 0-4 the first 2 days. You realize if one of those points flips, it's a tie. Now, they would have retained the cup, Europe would have, if they would have tied. But that's how close this thing usually is. One match flips, and all of a sudden things change quite a bit. And Scotty just didn't deliver last week. He did not play very well. That shot in particular was probably made a lot of us feel good, but that was a very difficult thing for Scotty.
All right, 3 quick ones to end it with you, and we'll talk football the next time you're on. Who was the star of this past weekend? Who was the biggest disappointment? And then what do we make of Keegan Bradley after all is said and done?
Well, the biggest disappointment, unfortunately, has to be Scotty when he only comes up with 1 point. The Americans lost by 2. and he's the best player on the planet by far, and he did not perform very well. Now, there's other things involved in that, but him particularly, he just didn't play great golf, his best golf, which is a shame. I thought the hero, that's the biggest disappointment of the week for the 24 players. I thought Tommy Fleetwood and Cameron Young were the two best players out there. God, Cameron Young played well, Kevin.
Yep.
And man, he should have been out there on the first tee as a New Yorker on Friday morning with Bryson DeChambeau and let it rip and let's get the momentum going, get red on the board, and let's crank it out. He played fabulous last week, and so did Tommy Fleetwood on the other side. As far as Keegan goes, very difficult spot for a contemporary, like I said earlier. 39 years of age. He plays with these guys. You know, usually the captain is a half generation ahead, like Luke Donald. You know, is in his 40s while the other guys are much younger. They all know each other, but it's not the same when you're playing with and against these guys all the time. I thought he made a couple of choices that were interesting. The setup of the golf course was a little bit easier than it probably should have been. I know why. They didn't want it to be a slugfest like a PGA Championship at Bethpage or a U.S. Open at Bethpage, but it was set up a little bit easier than it should have been. I thought he should have been playing, but by definition, when you're the 13th ranked player in the world and you're a top 12 player in the United States and you don't play, by definition, you're making the team worse. And the other thing is, if you're going to have, last thing, if you're going to have Bryson DeChambeau from Live on the team, which is perfectly fine, he should have been on the team, I would have put Brooks Koepka on that team. He won the PGA and Bethpage Black. He is a bad man on the golf course, if there is such a thing in this sport. He's won 5 major championships. He is not afraid of the moment. And to me, there was just a lot of factors involved there. But Keegan was fine. The players didn't perform. And there were some interesting decisions made. But Keegan was put in a very difficult position.
All right. Thanks for doing this. As always, we'll talk football next time. Appreciate it.
Big spot Sunday, man. Need to go to LA and win.
I think they might.
I know. I saw the lines, only 2.5. I like that.
Exactly.
I like that.
We think similarly. All right. I'll talk to you later. Thanks for doing this.
All right, my man. Be good.
Steve Sands, everybody. When we come back, what did you learn from this past weekend? It can be about our team. It can be about anything sports related, anything NFL related, anything college football related. What did you learn from this past weekend? 301-230-0980. I've got 2 of them for you when we come back. What'd you learn from this past weekend? We've opened up phone lines if you want to weigh in. There's an open line or two, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Something from our football weekend or even our golf weekend that you learned and you want to share with everybody. I'll share mine and Max will share his in just a moment. But first, I do want to tell you about Window Nation's deal going on right now. October is here starting tomorrow. And so will the return of chilly air seeping into your home. That is, if you've got old, stuck, or cracked windows. Eliminate annoying drafts once and for all with top-quality replacement windows from Window Nation. Window Nation has some of the best replacement windows out there that you can buy. Their installation crews finish the job in a day or less so you can get back to your daily routines with minimal interruption. Window Nation offers a lifetime warranty on their windows, so you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. And this month, when you buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 for free. Plus, there's no limit to how many windows you can replace with the buy 2, get 2 free offer. And your total price includes 1-day installation. They'll also give you the option of paying nothing for 2 years. No down payment, no payments, and no interest until the year 2027. That's a big deal with the holidays right around the corner. Put an end to your window problems before this beautiful fall weather ends. Call Window Nation at 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. All right, what did we learn from this past weekend? Couple of things for me. I didn't learn this. It was just confirmed because I actually thought Penn State was going to beat Oregon on Saturday night. They were a smell test pick for me. One of the 6 losses, 10-6-1 over the weekend. James Franklin just isn't a good enough coach for Penn State. I understand their success. I understand how much they've accomplished. That loss on Saturday night in overtime dropped Franklin's record against AP top 10 opponents to 4-21 at Penn State, including, get this, 1-18 against top 10 Big Ten teams. That's almost impossible to pull off if you are a Penn State. 1-18 against top 10 Big Ten teams with him at Penn State. Of course, the fans in Happy Valley, they've been frustrated for quite a while. And once again, fire Franklin chants rung out, especially when they were down 17-3 in the fourth quarter. They had a miraculous comeback. They took a 24-17 lead in overtime, but they ended up losing 30-24. Franklin said about the loss and about the reaction from the fans, quote, "I get that narrative, and it's really not a narrative. It's factual. It's the facts," referring to his record against AP top 10 top 10 teams. He said, hold on for a second. He said, "I try to look at the entire picture and what we've been able to do here, but at the end of the day, we've got to find a way to win those games. I totally get it, and I take ownership. I take responsibility," closed quote. But I would say his now 160 winning percentage against AP top 10 teams, which is tied for the 3rd worst record by a coach with a minimum of 25 games against top 10 teams at a single school since the AP poll began in 1936. I think if Penn State doesn't come back and at least get to where they got to last year, which was the national semifinals, which was a big deal for him in that playoff and getting to that round of the postseason. But I don't know, man. I think it's what you're stuck with James Franklin if you're going to go that route. The other thing I learned from this past weekend is that Ty Simpson, along with Carson Beck, are my 2 favorite pro prospect quarterbacks for the upcoming draft. I don't think this is going to be a stellar top of the draft. You're going to see quarterbacks taken, very high, many of them. But I think Ty Simpson is the whole package. Now, I don't think he's an elite level NFL quarterback, but he is smart. He is tough. He can make every single throw. He is mobile. He's 6'2.5", 6'3". I like Ty Simpson, and I like this Alabama quarterback. I really like Ty Simpson. It's interesting because after they lost to Florida State, I came in here, that next week when we were previewing, I think, week 2, because that was Labor Day weekend. And I said, I don't think he was the problem in that game. Their defense was the problem in that game. I thought Ty Simpson was pretty good in that loss in Tallahassee. Bama plays Vandy this week. They still have games against LSU and Oklahoma down the road. I think Bama with Kalen DeBoer, they're going to bounce back off that season opening loss, and they're going to end up being a playoff team because they have one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Carson Beck is the other one for me. I know that there are issues with his personality, and so those are the things we don't, spend a lot of time on because we're not exactly sure what these guys are in a meeting with NFL front offices and what the, due diligence will unveil. I know this, though. He can make every throw. And that game Saturday night against Florida State and Tallahassee is a huge game for the Noles, for sure, after they lost to UVA. Max, what did you learn from this past weekend?
So I'll start off with college football over the weekend. Mississippi State strikes me as a very for real team. I think they're going to be competitive down the stretch.
They lost in overtime to Tennessee.
Yes, I know. Yeah. But I do think that they're going to fill that role that kind of the Florida Gators had last year down the stretch, where like they beat Ole Miss and knocked them out of the playoff. I think Mississippi State is going to be that team this year, so keep an eye on them.
To knock Ole Miss specifically out?
No, just to knock somebody. Okay. Not sure who, but
yeah, they've got Texas, they've got they've got Georgia, and they've got Ole Miss all on the schedule the rest of the way.
Yeah, so there's going to be at least one team in there that they
got A&M this weekend.
That might be a good one. All right, and then moving to the NFL, I think the Saints, they're not good, but they are frisky. They're in games. They make them fun. They could have feasibly won that game against the Bills at the end, but the Saints are the Saints, and Kellen Moore.
They were down 2 in the fourth
quarter. I don't know how Kellen Moore he fails to manage the game is really how I'm going to put it. And then moving to the West Coast, the Rams, they're a legit contender. I think that they Blake Corum splitting carries with Kyron Williams is going to be a huge welcome addition to that backfield. Kind of takes the workload off of Williams a little bit. I know he's been dealing with injury the past couple of years, especially later in the season when he's been getting really banged up. So I think this is going to be helpful to keep him fresh. And then my last one, Brian Callahan is not going to make it through the rest of the season. I think he's going to get the Nate Hackett treatment. Like Cam Ward coming out and saying, I'll keep it a buck, we ass, is really all you need to say. I think Brian Callahan, and last night, man, I don't know if it's recency bias, but Zach Taylor did not look competent either. And Jamar Chase,
it looks like he's losing the team a little bit. Jamar Chase, by the way, I thought at times was unprofessional last night.
Quite a bit.
For the highest paid receiver in the league and a true gift, a gifted player, he was in full diva mode last night. He really was. I thought that he looked like he gave up on multiple plays. By the way, you mentioned Tennessee. I'm telling you, this dude that I'm going to mention has been one of the best and is still one of the best. And he may have had the highlight sack of the weekend on Sunday against C.J. Stroud in Houston. Jeffrey Simmons is an absolute interior beast.
He's an animal
of a lineman. He is so good. And he's wasting away in Tennessee. All right, I see some of you on hold. We've got an open line if you want to jump in. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What'd you learn from this past weekend? We'll take your calls next.
All right, it is Tuesday, September 30th. Monday Night Football was last night. The doubleheader, and boy, was it not good. In the battle between 2-0-3 teams, the Dolphins, they beat the Jets 27-21, but it was not as close as the scoreboard would lead you to believe. Tua Tagovailoa looked back on his game, throwing for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns, both of which went to Darren Waller, who seems to have risen from retirement with 3 receptions last night, again, 2 of which ended up being touchdowns. Not all sunshine and rainbows, though, for Miami. Tyreek Hill goes down in the third quarter after dislocating his knee and tearing multiple ligaments in that region. According to NFL insiders, he will have surgery later this afternoon. The second of the doubleheader, Broncos defense had Jake Browning and the Bengals in hell, and the Bengals defense looked like they were already in it as Bo Nix threw for 326 yards and 2 touchdowns, including 1 interception. Final score, Broncos win 28-3. Caps, they get going in the preseason matchup tonight versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. Logan Thompson expected to get the full 60 minutes tonight. Puck drop at 7 p.m. That'll be over on 106.7 The Fan. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1, and you can catch Den's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Sports Talk on this 980 signal is presented by our friends at Paramount Plus. You can't count on much, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. Washington was on CBS on Sunday with their game against the Falcons, and they don't have another CBS game this year. I was looking at the schedule. Basically, the 3 1:00 games over the first 4 weeks of the season, they don't play another 1:00 game until December 7th, the day that will live in infamy. Sunday, December 7th, at Minnesota is their next 1 o'clock game. And who knows, by then, potentially it could get flexed to the 4 o'clock window. Who knows? But 4:25 this week, then Monday Night Football against the Bears, 4:25 against Dallas, then Monday Night Football against the Chiefs, then Sunday Night Football against Seattle, then the 4:25 window against Detroit, then Madrid at 9:30, and then Denver on Thanksgiving weekend on Sunday night. That's the next 8 games before we get the next 1 o'clock game. I kind of like 1 o'clock games. It's not because I don't like staying up. I'm fine staying up and watching. But you just get to it quickly. Paulie, what'd you learn from this past weekend?
Hell to the W. What's going on, big guy?
What's up, big fella?
I learned from the weekend, and then I just learned 5 seconds ago listening to you read that schedule is this Commanders team better hurry up and find an identity of what they want to lean their hat on. Because right now, this team is bipolar.
Well, 5 might be a part of the identity. He's just got to be on the field.
Nah, this is a strategical identity. What do you want to be as an offense, and what do you want to be as a defense? I think they lost. They don't got that secret sauce is a little tangy this year, man. Darren Quinn he better effective.
Somebody should ask him about what the secret sauce tastes like right now.
Yeah, right. The secret sauce ain't tasting too good right now, man. You need to get that ingredients together, man.
Yeah.
I mean, all the parts are there. The parts are there for it, but they ain't cooking this dish right through 4 games. So they need to find an identity, man. College football, man. NIL is great for college football. I never thought I would say that, but it's bringing parity from one coast to the next coast. It don't seem like you got to run the table or be undefeated or just even you can have 1 or 2 or 3 losses.
Well, that's not NIL driven. That's playoff driven.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also NIL driven too because these guys are going where the money is taking them. So teams are able to build quicker. Look
yeah,
at
but what
NBA.
I'm saying is losing early used to be a death sentence. It's not anymore because we've got a 12-team playoff.
But I'm just talking about the complete.
I love the
package of it
sport.
all.
I love the sport.
Right.
I mean, for all the talk about how NIL and portal are ruining college sports, when the games begin and they're scheduled like they are with football during the fall, it's not impacting my enjoyment of Saturdays at all. At all.
In the past, it seemed that it was top heavy. You had to be a big boy university out of a big boy conference. Now it seems like everybody got a chance, man. You know what I mean? And another thing I learned this weekend is my boy with the Golden Domers, Reggie Love, is the best running back in college football.
God,
hell to the W, baby.
They could still run the table easily and be a playoff team, although a lot of their opponents are not going to be as good as once thought. Thanks. Thanks, Paulie. Let's go to Wayne. Wayne in College Park. What did you learn from this past weekend?
Well, Kevin, I got a chance to go to Wisconsin and see my Maryland Terrapins play out there.
Well, that wasn't this weekend. That was last weekend.
Team. Oh, you're right. It's been like 10 days ago.
Yeah.
My point still is they might have a real team. Just talked to Steve Suter about the same thing. That defense is amazing. I'm wondering what you're thinking because I know you're a Terp.
I love the defense. Wisconsin's quarterback situation was an absolute mess, right? Billy Edwards played 3 or 4 plays. They went with that number 18, O'Neal. I told Steve, man, there are a few players defensively that just look like, night 2, day 3 picks already. The kid, Sidney Stewart, 29, is a star. Reddick, 3. Wingate, number 1. They got some real studs on defense. Now, we'll see when they face better offensive teams because Wisconsin is down and they've got a bad quarterback. Malik Washington just got named the freshman of the year so far in college football, the Terps quarterback by ESPN. He's going to get tested this week. He's going to get tested this week at home against Washington. We'll find out how good they are Wayne, in the next few weeks. I mean, with Washington and Nebraska both at home, and by the way, Washington coming off a tough physical beatdown against Ohio State and the Terps with a bye week, it should be a good spot for Maryland to play well, but we'll know a lot more about this team after the next 2 games.
You will. They got a chance with, as you said, Washington, Nebraska, and then at UCLA.
Yeah.
All you need is 1 or 2 of those games to make it a real season in college.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to just be bowl eligible at 6-6. I think they're going to get there, with UCLA and with, a possibility of a Rutgers or a Michigan State at home at the end of the year, even this Saturday. But I want to see if we can turn this into a special season, where they win, 7, 8 regular season games and, are legitimately competitive against some of the better teams on their schedule. As you know, no Ohio State, no Penn State on the schedule this year is a benefit. Thanks, Wayne.
Oregon.
Good to hear your voice. Let's go to Mike in Silver Spring. Mike, go ahead. What'd you learn from this past weekend? Mike. No Mike? What about... Let's go to Samaj. Samaj, finish it up. Go.
Hey, good morning, Coach. Thanks for taking my call as always,
Yep.
Max. Thanks. Hey, man. Kev, we run on the same timeline, dude, and thus spoiled by the greatest coaching staff ever in the NFL. And I base that on if we came up shorthanded with the game plan coming in, we made the right adjustments at halftime between Gibbs and Pettibone. We always came out second half, guns blazing, and oftentimes took a loss from the hands of defeat, from the hands of victory, and we could turn that thing around and win. I just don't see it so far. I'm not really seeing it from Kingsbury. I'm definitely not seeing it from Coach Witt. And that's why every time I get something or see something or somebody speaks to me about something on social media, his name is being trashed all up and down, more so than the actual defense is being trashed. So
yeah,
that's
I'm hearing you. I got to
opinion.
run. I'm up against a hard break. We got to get to Russell, who's waiting to jump on here. But I think we got a couple more games. I'd like to see if they make any personnel changes this week. We got surprised with some of the personnel changes 2 weeks ago along the offensive line. I wonder if one is forthcoming this weekend. Chris Russell next, everybody.